Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Game Informer Show. I'm your host, Ben Hanson, and I'm joined as always by trusty co-host Tim Turi.
Ow!
Big dogs gotta eat. We also got Dan Tack.
I don't even know where to go with the dogs. Yep.
And
something.
Kyle,
Crocodiles.
Big Dogs Gotta Eat Hilliard.
Was his a call out to the Wolf Blitzer? Because he's like good friends with Wolf
You've
Blitzer?
already put 100% more thought into that intro than I have.
But welcome to the Game Informer Show. We got just a heck of a show. We got some good games to talk about. We got a good guest later on. So we're talking about Darkest Dungeon, which is that game you've been hearing about for 2 years, but now you can really hear about it.
Kind of like a nuclear throwing situation.
It really is. We got Paper Jam, the new Mario and Luigi game, which combines it with the better franchise of Paper Mario. Talking a little bit about Resident Evil Zero, some other stuff in there. Also, for the guest, after emails, we have Forrest Dowling, who is
Are you
from...
sure? That was like a question to yourself.
Dowling. Windy Moira Dowling. I don't know. But anyways, he is working on Flame in the Flood, which is a survival roguelike with like a really great aesthetic that's coming out on Steam and Xbox One.
Developed by it's by Molasses Flood, right? It's
Yeah.
former Irrational folks. It was one of those earlier super successful, pretty successful like Kickstarters.
Yeah.
And we had a big, long, nice feature in the magazine by Matt Helgeson about that game.
Also, a special edition podcast back in the day about the game. So it's Forrest's second time on the show technically, but it's a nice like follow-up on the Ken Levine chat from a couple weeks ago because this guy was a lead level designer for Bioshock Infinite, so I got to talk to him a little bit more about the specific areas that he worked on and then what it was like to form his indie studio and trying to keep up with, the survival market on Steam and stuff. So some interesting tidbits in that chat.
Yeah, and stay tuned in the second segment. I think we're going to give you a little bit of an update on our game club as either before or after we answer emails. So
Okay, that sounds pretty good. But to kick things off, Dan Tack,
Hello.
should we dim the lights in here?
Might as well.
welcome into my darkest
Get things a little more comfortable in here.
darkest
you know what I mean?
dungeon.
Absolutely. So Darkest Dungeon, tell us all about this game. Even though we've talked about it several times, you've put how many hours into this thing?
150-ish at this time.
So would you say that you just like craft it, or do you love craft it?
I do love craft it. It
Okay.
is astonishing in a lot of different ways. So let's tackle it from the top here. Straight up, let's talk about the Lovecraftian aspects without getting into the spoiling the story.
We just assume
Is it spoilable?
Yeah, a little
Twists
bit.
and turns?
No twist, but it's very straightforward. But like, it's still there's something going on.
Okay.
at this point in the game industry, unless you specifically call it out for not having it, let's just assume every video game has some Lovecraftian elements in it.
Many have Lovecraftian elements, but this is pure it.
That almost sounded derogatory, Ben.
This is like a
didn't mean it
Lovecraft
that way.
RPG. Like we're talking like Arkham Horror, Call of Cthulhu.
On Miyazaki's bookshelf at From Software in his
Oh,
office.
that level
So
of
it's
Lovecraft.
even more Lovecraftian than Bloodborne, I'd say, just
That's what I was
because
gonna ask,
it
yeah.
includes like the sanity elements.
Yeah,
So-
like Bloodborne for me to ask you the question about the Lovecraft theme. Bloodborne is a Lovecraft game by any other name, like any other name. It's not. It doesn't say the word Lovecraft. It doesn't say Eldritch. It doesn't say Cthulhu. There's none of that like actual language in there. It kind of tries to create its own version of it while like kind of rooting itself.
And this does the same thing. Bloodborne, you get insight, which is again sort of simulating the madness overtaking you. In this game, your characters actually go insane. But it's all sort of held together by this the narration by Wayne June, who actually was the narrator for a ton of like Lovecraft audiobooks. Which is how
for
they
real?
found him for
That's
this.
really cool.
Yeah, and it fits everything perfectly. Like everything's it's spoken, like the words they choose to use, which is why I use like a weird word in the title of my review.
Aphotic.
Yes.
What is that?
Dark.
Definition, please.
Dark.
Dark.
You chose a similar kind of like Lovecraftian, like an esoteric word. to
Right.
just- yeah. Okay.
And that's
Gotcha.
exactly the same way it is in the game when you're getting narration. Like, it's not just, you got hit by a critical strike. It's like, mortality has been clarified in a single strike as your crew falls.
As somebody who's
I
not
like that.
into Lovecraft specifically, is this going to annoy me?
No, you're going to love it.
Okay.
It's fantastic. Whether you like Lovecraft or not, it's really cool to hear like the narration of your team going through each dungeon.
It doesn't come off as like cheesy to kind of
Not
like,
at
use
all.
that
Oh,
almost
no.
borderline.
So-
old
okay, so this
English.
is
more
This game
like
is deadly serious.
more like Bastion. Like, is it have a similar effect?
Bastion's, similar
Bastion was
effect, but Bastion's like cozy. It's nice to have
True.
him telling you what's going on.
Yeah.
This is
right.
this is
different-
more like
That's a fireside.
horrible things are happening.
Bastion is a fireside tale.
Yeah,
Indoors with nice furniture, hot cup of cocoa, and then Darkest Dungeon is more in the cold by a campfire,
And your
hearing
foot's
ghost
in a
stories.
wood chipper.
just like a
Yes.
pure dungeon crawling experience, procedural generated roguelike, permadeath on your characters. Characters can go insane. Once they're insane, they can disobey orders.
Like XCOM, kind of.
Yeah. There are similarities to XCOM with the whole thing, but it's a traditional dungeon crawler.
Does the Insanity have some of my favorite elements in games like Eternal Darkness, where it messes with the game itself,
like
or is it just a matter of
wall?
XCOM Insanity?
There's no fourth wall breaking.
Okay.
It just wouldn't really work with this. This is like a turn-based RPG. I mean,
Right.
You'll get it when you see it.
Okay.
And again, the art style. So you combine this art style of the game, which is awesome. I've never seen anything like it. Mm-hmm. And you combine that with the narration, and it's just like the game's already there, right? And then you add this like difficult, challenging game on top of it.
And I heard that in the final version, because this has been pre-released forever. I heard the final version is even more difficult than what it was before.
I would say that's accurate.
Is this just going to annihilate everybody? Is this the
darkest
extreme stuff?
You will learn, and you will accomplish. You can beat.
You will be.
It depends. I can see a lot of people. I can see some people getting frustrated with the game and just doing the whole. I'm going to throw my keyboard at the wall and break my mouse. Mm-hmm. That'll happen.
So you said that the combat is like very straightforward dungeon crawling.
It is.
But
it's turn-based. But
yeah, that's what I want to know. Just the mechanics of the combat.
assembling your team together is very important. There's bleeding, there's poisoning. You want to get a team that has like a good balance of like stuns and damage and
Cuties.
everything is positional. So you definitely want to get some cuties in there. There are none.
Nice.
But
morale boost.
yeah, keeping ways to keep your stress levels low, ways to keep your HP high. It's all about picking a balance of sort of very unique characters that don't really fulfill archetypes. Like you've got like just weird stuff like Houndmasters, lepers.
Houndmaster.
Yeah,
That's
Houndmaster's
a great
great.
class.
They're awesome.
Why would a leper be helpful?
Leper's awesome. Leper's a great like melee frontliner. He's basically
Limbs falling off?
he's very religious, so he like can pray to restore health or buff himself up.
A leper means someone that has leprosy?
His face is falling off, so he
Okay.
wears a mask.
All I know about
cool.
lepers is that joke in The Simpsons where there's like leper in playing football and his arm falls off. He's a quarterback. And then
Oh.
Princess Mononoke. Those are my
That's everyone
only
else
two
Princess
frames of
Mononoke.
reference.
My favorite reference is coming to terms in religion class growing up with a real thing where parts of people's bodies would fall off.
That is a real thing. That is a real part of the disease. Yeah, that's
Is it
not great.
Is it just like chunks of skin at a time, like dino damage?
I mean, it
with the
sounds like
Jurassic Park toys?
necrosis.
I
Dino
believe it is something of that
Jurassic
nature.
Park,
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's like a battle damage. Yeah,
Right.
I think that's what it is. No, I think it's like
Necrosis.
necrosis is when the flesh rots off of like living. Your flesh is rotting away from the living flesh, and so it falls off.
Now you got to worry about like necrotic stuff, like a brown recluse bite or something.
That's
like
it.
that, you know.
Do you guys, since we're talking
Go
about-
Google spider bites, necrotic spider bites. You'll be good.
That's my homepage.
Don't do that. No one do that.
If you want to keep talking about dark stuff, you guys
We're
want to
getting
get
a little-
really twisted?
Okay, this is great.
Insanely twisted.
Insanely twisted on our little shadowy planet here is my roommate just told me the most disturbing story. He's listening to the Stuff You Should Know podcast, and there's an episode about blood types, and it's talking about like early experiments with people trying to understand blood types. And apparently, Kyle, have you listened to this one?
No.
Okay,
There was a radio
apparently-
lab recently about historical medicine, so
Oh,
I'm
yeah?
curious to hear where you're going with this.
But they would put different substances into people to try and replace blood if they were losing blood. And one of the things they put in people was milk.
did it work?
No, they died. But like apparently they just died in a super disturbing way. We're like putting milk in your veins, like their eyes just start all over the place and they start losing their mind and shaking. Then they die. Can you imagine anything gross than having milk in your veins?
I mean, I'm assuming this was a last ditch, like I'm gonna die anyway, kind of medical experiment, not like. Maybe today I'll get milk in my veins.
No, I think they were probably on death's door. It's like, we gotta put something in there. They're losing all the liquid. But they're out of salt water.
There was one case I had read a little bit about this where it had actually worked for some period of time for someone, and that
Milk?
is the character
chocolate milk
Ash
works.
from Ridley Scott's Alien.
Oh, is that
Yeah,
right?
he was killed on set.
Dan, is there anything? What's the most disturbing thing in this game?
Milk.
He just looks like he just saw like a man
sorry,
die
I'm-
from milk.
Yeah, milk does not do a body good apparently.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Tack's jokes, we got 'em.
Yeah.
What's the most disturbing
Applause
thing in
break
this
for that
game?
one.
The boss fights are great. Like they will truly test you. They'll kill your people forever. You'll get really mad and you'll come back twice as hard.
Kill your people.
But the darkest dungeon itself is like the final stage.
And that's new, right? Is that
That's all new.
Okay.
So even if you dominated the game in early access, you're going to get your ass kicked in there.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I played a game called FTL, and
Yes.
I really liked FTL. I liked it a lot. But even on the easiest difficulty, it just beat my ass.
You didn't beat it on easy? Okay.
Hey, what are you saying?
How many times did you attempt it? I think you could beat it on easy.
5 or 6?
You could beat it.
It's not hard.
FTL,
Yeah, but
FTL
the
has
point is I
actually-
didn't before I lost interest.
So here's let's get. I don't want to get into a conversation about FTL, but FTL has RNG elements that can really be.
Okay, so you're saying that Darkest Dungeon doesn't go to that level of unfair?
I definitely do not think so. Okay, here's the thing about Darkest Dungeon. A lot of people, I've heard plenty of comments about this. Oh, I got killed by RNG. No, you didn't. You got killed because you didn't. Something happened that you didn't plan for correctly. Okay.
You're responding to everybody on Twitter.
I'm responding to everybody right now.
Okay,
it's just
good.
being taken care of right now.
Yeah.
Yes, there are very few occasions in the game where RNG can get you. Like, if an ogre clouds your entire party and moves one of the guys in the back line to the front and then hits him with the tree branch and crits him in the face and kills him. Okay, that's RNG, but that's going to happen like 0.0001% of the chance of the time.
Random number generator, by the way.
Yeah. So any other time,
Thanks.
you could have done better. You could have planned better. You could have equipped better. You could have used better trinkets and equipment because you can outfit your guys. Mm-hmm. There's a lot you could do to handle whatever you're going to encounter. Knowledge is power in this game. So like if you're going to the ruins, okay, which is like got a bunch of skeletons in it, don't bring characters with bleed attacks because you can't bleed bones.
You can't
Right.
bleed bones.
So you're gonna have a bad time.
You're going to have that on your headstone, right?
Yeah, definitely.
You're in one.
Yeah, exactly.
So, what emerges after that many hours? You just have a deep appreciation of the strategic elements, the design.
Absolutely. I appreciate everything about that game. Like the only negative thing I have to say about it is perhaps it can be a little bit grindy getting your crews back after you've lost them.
Okay.
Trying to level them back up so they can indeed be ready to go back into the Darkest Dungeon. Mm-hmm. But that's all in-game stuff. Like, that's it. Like, if you're at the Darkest Dungeon, you know what's up. Like,
Your favorite roguelike ever?
What is it? What's he gonna say?
on the spot on that one. I'll go ahead and say yes.
What did you end
wow.
up giving this game?
A 9.25.
That is a good score.
It is a great score. And I also want to say, like, we're always talking about in the industry how, like, oh, Kickstarter, early access, what is this,
Right. Like
These have failed. This has been
Right.
a Kickstarter early access game the entire time, and it's
it's
definitely worth it.
It's two strikes against it, and it still comes out shining.
Right.
the name of the developer again.
Red Hook Studios.
Is this their first game?
Yeah,
Who are they?
that's a great question.
Who are these guys?
Let's get them on the show.
Yeah, I would love to. That'd be
All
interesting.
right, let's do it. I'm sure they're down.
Okay, that'd be great. I'd love to talk
This
about
is exciting. But the frustrating part for me is like I know this game's out on PC right now.
Yes.
PS4 and Vita versions to follow.
They are coming in the spring.
The Vita version as well. I remember Sony had to
Vita as
step up
well.
and be like, "We'll help you. We'll put it
Yeah.
on there."
So it just sounds like such a good Vita game.
At least that was the yeah.
Basically, I just feel like I know that my PC could run it.
Sure.
It sounds like it's not incredibly demanding
not.
as far as resources go on your computer, but I kind of want to wait for a console. It just sounds like a comfortable controller game.
I say get into it now. It's really good. You don't want to miss it.
No?
Yeah, but there is controller support for PC version, right?
Why? I don't know. You'd ever use a controller for this game?
Really?
Oh, that's right. Those baby objects. I think Fisher Price
Really?
makes all of
what
them.
what about it? Like, what about the mouse and keyboard?
I mean, it's a game that lends itself toward moving the mouse around, clicking. Like it's a turn-based game. You do really. I can't see what you do with a controller. Like there would be no advantage to using one at all. It'd
Except
be,
comfort.
Sitting on a
kinda
couch.
clunky.
Yeah.
Have you ever sat in a couch, Mr. PC? It's really cozy.
I've never tried it, but maybe someday.
I'm really worried about XCOM 2 coming up soon,
Yeah, it's gonna be great.
and thinking about no controller support for that game. And it's the first case I can think of where I thought, God, I kind of want a Steam controller. Just so I can lean back in my couch and play it that way, because it would work just fine, and it'd be a good chance to kind of experiment with the Steam controller.
I mean, the cool thing is you could try one, because we have some here at the office. Like, you could try one, and the cool thing is that people create controller profiles for these things right away. So, like, you can just have someone who's poured all the hours into mapping the buttons out for it. And it's like, if you think you can do a better job, go for it. But if you tried it and didn't like it, you'd know pretty quickly without having to, like, assign everything yourself.
yeah. Hey, Dan Tack, what's
Hey,
your
sir.
stance on the Mario RPGs?
I loved the first one. Absolutely
The
loved
Super
it.
The
Nintendo
Super
one?
Nintendo?
Yeah,
7 Lost
Deadly
Star?
Sins. And then what about after that?
I didn't play the rest of them.
Didn't touch any of them.
Nope.
Mario and Luigi, GBA, nothing.
Nope.
Tim, I know you love Bowser's Inside Story, and you seem to like the Mario and Luigi games.
I've played every single one. Yeah, I played Superstar Saga on my GBA, and like I also played Mario RPG. I breezed past Paper Mario at the
Go on.
sorry, hold on a second. I breezed past Paper Mario at the video store, and I just dismissed it. I'm like, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't sound like what I want from a side-scrolling Mario game.
Yeah.
But then, the Mario and Luigi game, I remember just like seeing it. It looked so good. The animation's so good on the GBA, and I followed that series through. and I played most of the Paper Marios, and so this seemed like a dream come true.
Great. Well, this is a good chance to talk about Resident Evil 0.
I want to talk about it. I reviewed it.
Okay, Mario and Luigi
I played it
Paper
all the way
Jam.
through.
New 3DS RPG.
Yeah.
They're finally bringing Paper Mario back in a great RPG in theory. And Kyle, you're big on referencing the 2012 Paper Mario.
Bring him
which-
back though.
Yeah, that's what you keep saying. Bring it back, but there was one.
Yeah,
like
it
2
was
years
Dream
ago.
Team.
No,
Well,
no,
no.
I'm talking about Paper Mario
Oh, 'cause-
specifically.
oh,
But there was
because
Sticker Star. in
Sticker Star
2012.
And Super Paper Mario, like by Super Paper Mario started dialing back RPG elements.
Yes.
considerably.
And Sticker Star, it seemed like they're getting back to that. And then it came out, and I was really disappointed by it. Like, it had a really like segmented structure. You didn't get other team members going throughout it, and like every battle you had items basically that you could only use for attacking, and like constantly feeling like you were draining your attacks. It just felt so gross. It really,
It's like weapon durability, kind of.
yeah, it was not the Mario RPG experience I wanted. And then I played Dream Team, jumping to the Mario and Luigi ship, and just went on for so long. And there was like some funny stuff in there, but I just wasn't in love with it. So
It's funny that you treat them so like separate.
I do,
because
yeah.
I've always thought like when Mario and Luigi came out on Game Boy Advance, the very first one, I was like, oh, this is like. I like in my head, I was like, "Oh, this is a new Paper Mario." Is kind of how I thought. It has a different art style, but like the gameplay is very similar.
the
Japan, they're literally called Mario and Luigi RPG.
Yeah,
both of them are?
and
No,
I think
no.
Oh, okay.
I think Paper Mario was actually called Mario RPG 2 for a
Right.
while.
Yes, I think you're right.
But the difference, and so I think Tim and you and I, you've reviewed it obviously,
Yeah.
but we've been playing Mario and Luigi Paper Jam and thinking about it, about the two series and how they differ. I think what it comes down to for me is like Paper Mario series, like I consider like the first two, just masterpieces. Absolutely love them. They're all so writing and character focused. And that's what I appreciate, like going around recruiting, getting new team members. They're all just bizarre, weird characters. It's Undertale-esque for Dan Tack's reference. And then
Kind of like that game.
yeah, whereas Mario and Luigi, they seem much more gameplay focused, and they're constantly throwing in little gameplay gimmicks to kind of. It feels like distracting you from the RPG systems. Like, hey, here's this new thing. Here's another tiny little action thing you can do. Hey, look over here.
Okay,
Whereas
yeah, I can
it's
see
not confident in just the baseline RPG mechanics.
And
I feel
there
like.
certainly are like fewer sort of characters and personalities in the Mario
Yeah,
RPG
for
games. Like,
sure.
I think the dialogue is really funny, and there's lots of good, but it's usually focused around the characters we know. Like Bowser has been consistently funny, and like does
Yeah.
Peach, it usually has funny things to say.
And the gimmick in Paper Jam is like, hey, now there's 2 Bowsers and 2 Peaches and 2 Marios, and that seems like it's the most front-facing gimmick. I mean, if I know the Mario and Luigi franchise, what's going to happen? He's going to find out some weird new evil wizard thing or returning evil wizard thing is back, and they're behind the reason that this book is exploded magically into the Mushroom Kingdom. But
They should all be really freaking out more about seeing a new dimension. Like all the paper characters in this game, they're pretty cool. They all just treat it like, oh, cool, get to meet my twin. This is great.
there was a
the toads are terrifying.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
I just ran across a toad that was just kind of like everything seems so much more vivid and rounder, and realized, oh, I must be in a dream. Like, and
That's actually like one of the few kind of things I don't like about the game is you have to track down all these toads that are like hiding, like they're scared.
how often are you doing that?
I would say like over the whole course of the game, you spend maybe like maybe like a fifth of your time doing that.
That seems like a mistake.
Yeah,
Because
It's like a 40-hour game?
It feels like a tutorial. It feels like a tutorial mission.
They definitely mix it up. Like there's some that are like where you're just like literally just trying to find them. Like they close off an area and you're like, I look in here for a while. But then there are some where you have to chase them, and there's like some other like weird mini games and stuff like that. But yeah, like that. That is kind of one of the only things I didn't really like about this entry.
but
was
that's the
finding
main
toads.
thing, because
Yeah.
there are other things that I'm really surprised that they have fixed, like being able to save anywhere.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't know how that works exactly. It seems like you
you
can
can just save
you can.
anywhere.
Pretty
as
much
long
sa-
as you're not walking.
Yeah,
You have to tap on the screen to get the save thing to show up, which is
Yeah.
why it's a little bit confusing. It doesn't
Yeah.
look like you can save everywhere, but you can.
and that's been really nice. There are some and the ability to skip past some tutorials.
Yeah, I was super happy about that.
That's
like, pretty much
uncommon.
everything's kind of pushed off to this. Like, it's like, hey, if you want, you can go look up this stuff, and that kind of extends into like the combat, like when you get new abilities and stuff.
Bros
like that.
moves or
yeah,
was it-
like you can practice them in the middle of a fight. Like you don't have to.
Yeah.
That's cool. Could you always do that? I did not play the
I
last
think
two.
I think it was a
lot of
little
that.
bit more buried, but like I don't remember the previous one being as in your face where it's like, all right, every time you click on a bros attack, which is like, where your one example is you have like a mushroom or something, and it's just like a volley where like it's like playing racquetball. and it's like a timing mini game between Paper Mario, Mario, and Luigi, and they all have to like bat it back and forth.
Yeah.
And immediately it says practice on the bottom.
Yes,
every
there's
time.
just a button to hit practice.
So if you forgot how to do it, it's been a couple hours since you used the move. Like you can practice real quick, hop back in there, and do it.
Yeah, which I like a lot. Like I love that tutorials are pushed out of the way. They're there if you want them. You don't have to do them. Even like new in-world abilities, like you can like later be able to turn into a paper airplane and like fly a little bit, and like you can drill underground and stuff like that. Even that stuff is just given to you, and you can leave and go to a separate area where you're like kind of do the tutorial you would expect in a Nintendo game, where you have to like you got to do this. You can't leave till you do this. Like all that stuff is optional. It's totally pushed to the side, which is awesome.
So what do you think of the writing in this game? So far, it has a couple funny moments.
There were a couple of parts where I really laughed, like where my wife
What simulated?
Okay,
Is that it?
So I was sitting here, I was playing, and I was kind of you could hear button clicking, and then I kind of went, that's good.
Keep it down in there, Kyle.
Kyle! And a whole lot of Dad, stop playing your game.
Wait, is that your son?
That's my.
And then what'd your
daughter's
pet toad say?
I don't have a pet toad. I don't know what you're talking about. But it's witty. Like it's never like seriously laugh out loud funny, but it's witty.
Well, I guess it was because
LOL.
And like they're always crapping on Luigi, which is funny.
good.
Like Starlo is
That's
always
really hilarious.
Is always just like really excited about Mario, and it's like, oh, there's two Marios here, and then it's like, and Luigi, you can probably help.
There was
you know?
some really good stuff with that in Dream Team, like going
Yeah.
into Luigi's dreams, and it's just like clearly him having this insane like inferiority complex,
totally.
but also he loves his brothers so much. Like
Yeah.
it's just like there was at some point we've talked about before where they just started like stepping in. I think Mario and Luigi was maybe the Mario RPGs where they started to like really try to make these characters distinct from each other,
Right.
and kind of push Mario or Luigi in this sort of like scaredy cat, slightly effeminate like direction.
Just the weirdo direction seems to be
Yeah.
lovable weirdo.
That's it. And obviously Luigi's Mansion brought that a lot of the way home.
Yeah,
too.
and there's a sequence. I don't know. It's like a weird. I guess it's a spoil. Like it's not a
Don't
super
spoil
story
it?
heavy game. But I was gonna say there's a moment where like you get split up and you play as Luigi for.
Well,
a
that
while.
happens.
On
I mean,
so.
like Bowser's Inside Story went down that road.
I
I
like
also want to highlight like the two Bowsers. Also, I thought they had a lot of good moments.
yeah,
That's what I'm most excited for.
in the
Yeah.
beginning, like they're debating like who's a better kidnapper of Peach and stuff.
Oh, really?
I know,
Yeah.
like when they do kidnap Peach in the beginning, like the one Peach just looks at the other and she goes, "Well, I guess it's that part of the story." And then Peach is like, "Oh, not again."
Well, she's like, yeah. Then she's like, "Well, I don't hate this. It's kind of fun to ride in the helicopter thing."
Oh, just acknowledging just like the repetition of being kidnapped.
So
yeah.
there's some good stuff like that. I wish there was more Bowser actually, because
Oh,
he's not in it as much as I would like. But when he's there, it's always
Bowser
fun.
needs his own game so badly.
They should like go
like
inside
a-
of him actually and like make a whole game.
Excuse
like,
me, Kyle?
Like where the game takes place inside of Bowser. That would be interesting.
What?
You want
What would you even call that?
I don't know.
You want like a platformer? Is that
No,
Inside
it
Bowser?
would be cool if it was like an RPG like this, like a Mario and Luigi game.
F up.
Can I tell you what I was worried about with this game? I liked Partners in Time, which is the second Paper Mario where I'm sorry,
Mario
the second
Luigi.
Mario and Luigi. How could you ever get those mixed up? And the baby Mario and Luigi get mixed up somehow with regular old Mario and Luigi, and you control all four of them with all four face buttons. And I don't know if some part of my brain is underdeveloped in a certain way, but that was hard.
No, I struggled with that
that was
too.
so hard. And so when I saw I guess I had there's like a foregone conclusion in my head when I saw this game was announced. I'm like, oh, so it's going to be Paper Mario and Luigi and Mario and Luigi for some reason. But it's only the three, it seems like,
Yeah.
from what I gather. And like, that may be the sweet spot. It's a little annoying when you have to jump through the environment
Yeah.
and you have to hit three. Like,
You
have
can also hit X on the top. That'll make all three jump.
You don't jump as high, but that does work.
Does it
Yeah.
work for most gaps?
Yeah.
'Cause, like, if
because
people-
you flutter jump when you hold down X, so
Oh,
you
that's-
you don't jump as high, but you jump further.
That's good to know because I thought that was just to wind up the dash. But anyway, if people don't understand this part, like imagine like a Chrono Trigger Mario RPG style overworld where you can see the enemies and avoid them or jump on them to get the literal jump in the battle and the head start. And you have to like navigate and kind of platform through the environment. And there's two ways you could do it. You could either try to like roll your thumb across the three independent like buttons for the characters and try to time it, or hit this flutter jump button.
Yeah, it is. I'm with you that like hitting the three buttons at once, like this is just another dumb gimmick. I sound negative on this game, and like I do love the Mario RPGs.
It's so
like,
charming.
I enjoy it. Not as much as Paper Mario, but I still really enjoy it. But it does just feel like, you know, they'll have the blocks where it's like only Mario can hit this one, only Luigi can hit this one. It's like just alternating between these buttons is not fun. Like the novelty of having buttons assigned to different characters or vice versa, like it just wears off so quickly.
I think in battle it's great.
Really? It's still just...
I never got sick of it. It keeps you on your toes in where...
It'd be the exact same way if you just controlled it and just altered between those characters.
But then then you remove
They'd
that
have
part
to-
when you have to kind of track who it's going to attack.
Right.
And then this game, another thing that they improved is like, if you don't like the guesswork of like, okay, as Goomba's running up, he runs in between Mario and Luigi. Is he going to run towards Mario or Luigi? You got to read the cues to know which way he's going to go. If you don't like that, you can turn on a thing where it's just like, it will tell you who he's about to attack. So you can remove that guesswork. So you can have it closer to kind of what you want. But I don't know. I like that guesswork.
Also, like when you brought up Partners in Time, like the 4 buttons, like the one advantage of this game over that one is that Paper Mario's jump like in the battle actually flutters a little more. So that, and like when you use the hammer, as long as you have copies, like you have a much bigger window to time to hit things.
Oh, yeah, that's
Which
great.
is helpful. And it's also like easier to hit all 3 buttons at once as opposed to all 4. I feel like it's a small thing.
Yeah.
But like it has like the potential to get complicated and never
That's
gets
true.
crazy, but it's definitely much more manageable than Partners in Time.
And
was,
if you
for
were
sure.
a little kid with a small thumb, I feel like this would be like I know it maybe sounds weird, but it would be a hard game to play. But my question is, so if Bowser's Inside Story was all about the gimmick of like it kind of, you play as Bowser and you also play as Mario and Luigi trapped inside Bowser, and that creates some really interesting, fun situations.
Magic School Bus type situation.
Yes, exactly. Something River of
prefer
Lava.
Inner Space,
What is it
actually.
again?
Rock a river of lava.
Thank you, Ben. That's exactly what I wanted. And then, Dream Team was all about like the big Luigi battles and being inside his head, so it got really crazy. How far does the paper mechanic carry this game? Does it end up becoming interesting? Because I know there's like Papercraft Mario. There's, like we mentioned, you can make copies of yourself, and so when you jump attack a Goomba, like you have to time your jump attacks for everything. It's like a jump, and that's like the rhythm that you have to like memorize.
Yeah.
But like as far as like the story, the environments, and combat, do you feel like it carries it?
I mean, it doesn't affect like the environment that much. Like it doesn't change the game dramatically. Like as far as like Mario and Luigi stories go, it's pretty straightforward.
okay.
You know what I mean? You're just kind of moving through this environment, and sometimes like stuff will be made out of paper, and it doesn't. I'm trying to even think now. Like I don't think there's anything you really do in the environment that's like different. It's like, oh, this part's paper, so I need to do something different. It's more of just like an aesthetic change. than anything
I love a
else.
good mashup of combining these worlds, but it's kind of disappointing to me that it's the Mario and Luigi series that's getting mashed up with Paper Mario. Like I really liked in Mario 3D World on Wii U, I don't know if you remember that, but they have like the paper Bowser hiding in one of the dungeons, and it looks really cool seeing it in that 3D environment. But for Mario and Luigi, where they're already sprites, like they're already technically 2D, like adding 2D elements. It's not like that distinct visual gap that I guess I'm really looking for.
I think that they pull it off pretty well. And if you turn on the 3D on the 3DS, actually, like I think it helps kind of create that depth that you're talking about.
Yeah,
and
I'm not a Neanderthal. I don't think I can use it.
Oh, you have a 2DS?
That's right.
Okay, gotcha. Or you do have a 2DS. What would make it a Neanderthal?
I don't use 3D.
Neanderthals
Wait, but
could
wouldn't
use 3D. They have
wouldn't a
2 eyes.
Neanderthal use less technology than someone?
It was just a turn phrase.
I think that you turned a phrase into a bad phrase.
I want Dan Tack to ask Kyle a question about Paper Jam.
What do you think of Paper Jam, Dan Tack?
What game would you recommend to the table here? Darkest Dungeon or Mario?
Great question.
Wait, you're asking me?
Yes,
Well,
I'm
God
asking
knows
you.
that it's one or the other.
Man, well, they're pretty similar. They're both RPGs.
They're both RPGs. They're both very lighthearted.
I
You
don't know,
control
gave-
multiple characters.
You gave it Darkest Dungeon a higher review than I gave Mario and Luigi.
I did, but this question is purely to you. Scores don't mean
For
anything
me,
here.
I'm scared of Darkest Dungeon. That game sounds hard and scary.
Wait, so Kyle, you haven't even played it?
No,
So-
it sounds way too difficult for me to enjoy it.
Based on your experience, though.
Based on
Hang on.
listening to Dan talk about
this
it
dude,
in the office.
You're playing Bloodborne, right?
Yeah,
So
and I'm
you can
struggling
handle
with
it. All right, you're ready for it.
Here's the thing. I actually like you have spoken highly of it for like forever. So like I definitely want to touch it and try it, but I am intimidated by that game for sure. Where Mario and Luigi is
Don't
like,
be afraid.
It's fun.
It's just like Mario and Luigi. Just pretend that the leper is Mario
Is there time button pressing?
and the Plague Doctor is Luigi.
Leper Mario.
Yeah.
Oh, Plague Dr. Mario?
Plague Doctor Luigi. We'll get a whole cast of characters going on here.
This seems all right. What did you give Mario and Luigi?
875.
Solid.
I like this one in terms of like all the Mario and Luigi games. Like I think this one's like ranks high. Like I think this
That's
is a good
great
one for sure.
And you know what? Like I've talked on the podcast about like my playthrough of like Earthbound and stuff, and like those sort of like the music, the charm, exploring the world, the humor. Like a lot of those things apply to like this series, like Paper Mario. It just feels like comfort food. It's just like soothes the soul. It doesn't get so challenging. It doesn't get too easy. It rides that wave most of the time, and like I don't know, it's not earth shattering, but it's always fun.
Yeah.
And silly and witty.
Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about Resident Evil 0?
I bet Tim does.
Yeah.
Who else has played Resident Evil 0? It came out in 2002.
I played it a
You've
little
had
bit.
time.
I think I played like the first like 3 or 4 hours of it.
So you get off.
I think I was borrowing a GameCube from a friend or something like that.
Get off the train.
Yeah, no.
So the HD version just came out for this. They gave it the same treatment that they gave Resident Evil Remake last year, right?
Yeah. So it's basically last year what they did is they took the Resident Evil GameCube remake, I think from 2000, or it might have been even 2001, and what they did is they updated all the character models, so all the monsters and characters and stuff got the same treatment that any HD update kind of gets. But they also had to go in and gussy up all the backgrounds because they're sort of pre-rendered backgrounds with some moving. Like basically, from what I understood, is that the Resident Evil series, when they used that technique to make the backgrounds more lifelike, it was actually almost like a looping movie, like a movie file or something. But then they had to, get back in there and update them. It seems like they had it seems like they learned their lessons from the remake because there are fewer, like Resident Evil 0, I think, across the board looks more updated. There's some spots in Resident Evil Remaster HD that like Lisa's room specifically, which is like where some monster hides out. It looked like there was a Photoshop filter that was put over it, and that they didn't have time to like go into this very detailed room and update it all. But 0 looks really, really good still. Like those GameCube games, if you had popped them in, at any point, ignoring the fact that they're not in HD, like they aged super well. The atmosphere was like and especially for like from one generation to the next, they already looked good. So gussing it up looked good. The new control scheme that they started with Resident Evil HD Remaster still feels awesome. I played it the entire way through. What's cool about it is it defaults to like, I feel like we just had this conversation because HD Remaster of the first one came out last year, but the original Resident Evil games, tank controls,
Nuked that.
It's still there,
Right.
but it defaults to like the character moves in the direction that you move the analog stick, But the cool thing is you can actually switch straight to the D-pad, and that'll always have tank controls on it. So if you want to switch on the fly between them, if you're having trouble with a camera angle, because there's a weird thing, like run down a hallway, the camera angle will change, and suddenly the direction that you're holding the analog stick is now a different direction because they're fixed camera angles.
So they've updated the hell out of this. I've heard 2 varying opinions coming out of the internet since Resident Evil 0 HD came out.
Mine's the one that matters.
Well, we'll see. But I hear people saying, boy, this is one of the weaker Resident Evil games. I don't know why they made the HD treatment of this. The HD version seems nice, but not in the upper echelon of Resident Evil. And I've seen other people be like, Resident Evil 0 is better than people remember. It gets a lot of crap.
Yeah, I've always really been confused by some of that feedback because I did love Resident Evil 0, but like you have to keep in mind that I have fell in love with few game stories the way that I did with Resident Evil, and while acknowledging how ridiculous it is and all that, and the fact that like I loved moments in Resident Evil Remake and stuff where you just like, oh my god, you can go outside the mansion now more, and there's these whole new areas. And I always wondered, like playing Resident Evil back in the day, like in the mid '90s or whatever, like God, what if you could just go back outside the mansion door and go see what the hell else was going on outside around this area? And 0 kind of did that. Like they're like, hey, there's other screwed up Umbrella stuff going on. Like go to this water treatment facility, go to this Umbrella training academy, be on this train. You can actually go to locations that will like weave into the underground laboratory from Resident Evil 2, which like that was like the fact that there's the Resident Evil 2 remake that's on the horizon that's been confirmed or whatever, like just seeing that stuff got me excited before I even knew that was a possibility that Capcom would ever do it. But yeah, I think where people's criticism comes from is that I will admit that Billy is like, going back to it, Billy's kind of a jerk. He starts off just kind of like that, kind of like, well, I'm going to take orders from you, dollface, just sort of like talking down to Rebecca and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, like it fleshes out the background of like, well, how did Umbrella start? How did the virus even break out in the mansion? And goes to some cool areas. Yeah, some of the monsters, like, all right, giant centipede, giant cockroaches, giant frog. I guess that like is, to some people were let down by that, because like that series has had some crazy, like you look at Nemesis, and once you get up to Nemesis, anything past that, I think like he's probably the most memorable Resident Evil villain, or monster. And Tyrant's crazy looking, but
Or
like
the little lick-a-tongues on the ceiling.
yeah, and lickers. Yeah, lickers were wild too. But if you look at the original Resident Evil, it's like, okay, zombie dog, zombies, giant spiders. Not even interesting because they're like viral. Giant sharks, not necessarily unique because they're viral.
Plant.
You got the giant plant. And snakes, just regular ass snakes, just slithering around. There's just more of them. Like, for me, like the fact that you're fighting some basic monsters in Resident Evil 0 never really stood out to me. It felt like it clicked in line. The stuff that bummed me out about the Resident Evil 0 having followed the remake was that they got rid of defensive weapons, which was like you could collect like these daggers and frag grenades or flash grenades and like taser batteries.
Wait, they got rid of it in the remake?
No, in 0.
Okay.
Which 0 came out after the remake. And it was just nice because if you got grabbed by a zombie, if you had these one-time use items, you could just like stab a zombie in the head and get out of jail free.
Interesting. Okay.
And then if you had a shotgun, you could shoot their head off and their dagger you could use it again. But anyway, I still think it's absolutely worth playing. The big gimmick here is that, and I've been referencing it a lot in our Martian Gothic Super Replay. Yeah, check the clock. It's you have to put a time limit on how long I can talk about this. You control 2 characters in this game. You play Rebecca Chambers and Billy Cohen, and sometimes you're forced to split up, like Mario and Luigi, and you have to do a lot of trading weapons from each other. Where this game doesn't age to me is instead of the magical storage item box where they're all connected and it's pretty much infinite, you pretty much have to dump everything on the ground, and this can be very liberating at first. Like if you have to get rid of your knife, or like I don't need this ink ribbon, or actually I don't need these handgun bullets, which would be a sacrilege actually. And then the way the camera's positioned, it can be hard to align your character over the item to pick it up.
Okay.
And especially with the widescreen mode, which zooms in a little bit. So you're losing just a little bit of 4:3 aspect ratio, which could cut off a little bit of the floor, and you might not know where that item is.
Right.
You kind of have to go into your map, and it'll show you where all your items are. That can be tricky. And then just trading items between each other can be kind of cumbersome sometimes.
Sounds like a real pain in the ass. Also, I should warn people, there is a math puzzle in this game that we encounter in the test chamber.
That's nothing new to Resident Evil.
Oh,
like
math puzzles.
They go all over the place with their puzzles, but it's basic math. I paused it and figured it out in 30 seconds.
Yeah. So, I mean, Resident Evil seems like they're in remake city mode, Raccoon City. Whereas they got Resident Evil 2 coming up.
The Devil May Cry 4 HD remake.
I guess just Capcom in general,
update.
Yeah. But what do you want from the future Resident Evil beyond the remakes?
Just before we soldier past that, realize that like they are in Remake City, but one thing that they've been doing well is like adding new characters or new modes and stuff. And there's a Wesker mode we did on Test Chamber. So if you want to see Wesker use his laser eyes to blow up some zombie heads in this mode that you unlock by beating the game once, check out our Test Chamber on it.
Yeah.
Won't say much more than that. But what do I want? Like that's been like the hardest question because right now I can only think about Resident Evil 2 remake, and that I don't know whether I want it to be like the classic formula. The classic, like...
Pick it right now. Which one do you want? Which one will you be disappointed about? You need to pick it.
No, because
pick it right now.
Here's the tricky thing, is that when I first saw Leon in the RPD, like, unlockable outfit in Resident Evil 4, I just like, oh man, like, what if... And like that's when you're in the honeymoon period with Resident Evil 4's
Screen
controls.
looking good, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I always said.
Well, it seems like now they are like capable of like branching in both ways. Like they could take 7 and make it like a classic game, and then was it Revelations, right?
Yeah,
Just keep
Revelations.
that going down the action route and just have like 2 branching Resident Evil franchises.
They-
you know,
yeah,
that's what I would like.
Wait,
to see,
wouldn't it be vice versa? Seems like Revelations is
Revelations
their attempt to
would-
get
that-
back to
that
horror.
would be 4 action, and then like Resident Evil 7.
but it's very much on the opposite track of that.
I would say
Yeah,
that
I'm saying that's what I would like to see, but I agree with you. Yeah, that it does not seem to be going that direction.
Revelations had a little bit more of the slower pace, kind of horrific, like pacing to it than like Resident Evil 5 and 6 for sure. But it still wasn't like it still leaned more towards Resident Evil 4 as far as action goes. I don't know. I think just for like the sake of a remake, you know, in the way that I look at like Final Fantasy 7 is just like, oh, you know, deep down, I think I really wanted that just to look better and be the same game mostly. But I don't know. Maybe we're doing a game club, so maybe we'll find out that's not exactly what we want. I don't know. Part of me just really wants to see it like just like the HD remaster was, but I don't know. Like maybe there's something super cool I don't even know about. Like,
Isn't it weird that it's been? When did 6 come out? 2012. It's been a while since we hear about the next mainline entry.
yeah, I'm having trouble remembering when 6 was.
I think it was 2012.
but I don't know. My big thing is that I want it. Whatever the Resident Evil 2 remaster is, I want it to play off expectations like the remake of the original did, which is like, hey, you think this thing attacks you here? Nothing attacks you here. And this is the part where nothing happened is like this whole new section, and like those types of things, and like that item that you thought was here is something else
I
completely.
wonder if that just comes from Mikami doing both versions. And whereas this is going to be a team that might have worked a little bit in Resident Evil 2, but not like that visionary director coming back to revamp
Yeah.
it. So they might want to be more loyal than you expect.
That's
you
the
know?
thing. You never know if like, it was Mikami just finally able to make the game he always wanted to, or was Resident Evil the first one pretty much what he wanted to make, and now he was just like going out of his way to remix it, because I think there's been arranged modes and stuff of other Resident Evils.
There's also been a much bigger gap between Resident Evil 1 and remake and Resident Evil 2 and whenever Resident Evil 2 remake comes out. Like, is that larger gap kind of going to eliminate some of the memories people have? Like, you have like those games inside and out, but there might be a lot of people who are playing Resident Evil 2 for the first time. It's a remake. Like,
And you know, I think there's a lot of people that played Resident Evil HD remaster for the first time,
Yeah.
and will probably never go back to the 1996 version.
why would they?
Well, I don't know. We write about video games for a living, so it's like impossible not to answer that question.
Yeah.
But I guess I just feel like as long as it's a good game and tells the story still, like, and also Resident Evil 2 is aged way better than Resident Evil 1.
Yeah.
Like, it's a better game. It's like one of the best sequels ever.
That's where I started, actually.
Yeah,
2.
it's a good spot.
Give me your greatest hopes for the next mainline Resident Evil and your worst fears.
I hope that it's scary without like, while still having really satisfying gameplay. You know, I would love for Resident Evil to be scarier than like the last couple have.
Yeah.
Because that game used to be like, I can't go to sleep at night. You know, and
Well,
like
you're a dopey little kid.
I was a dopey little
wanting
kid.
to be a big
But-
dopey kid.
But we've seen what modern horror is capable of in video games. So
So you want just like a little bit, like shave off some filings from PT and get it in your Resident Evil.
that, you know what, like that kind of mystery would be fun with Resident Evil 6. I think that there was a crazy scope of things you could do, like, you know, fall on the ground and shoot, and then roll around and like shoot like on your back, and then get up and like
Get bad reviews.
There was a crazy amount of. I liked Resident Evil 6.
I know.
Yeah. So not from us, but I just a little bit more focus could be nice for that, I guess.
Worst case scenario, Resident Evil 7.
If it's a bad game.
Okay, that sounds about right. Dan Tack?
It's a straight shooter right there coming out.
Ping. Got it.
I gave Resident Evil 0 HD remaster an 8.5.
Good.
One
There
of
we go.
one of the best classic Resident Evil games.
Interesting. Top 5?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to sit. I have a list somewhere on the website. Go look at that.
Yeah, I saw somebody. I think they tweeted at me like, "Oh, you better let Tim talk about Resident Evil a lot because you know you always have your limit for how much you can talk about it on this podcast, and whatnot." So I like to clear my name because I let you talk about it for a long time.
Too much.
Also, listen to last week's episode. You did an excellent job hosting. Just in love with
Oh
it.
my gosh! Thank you, Ben.
You're pitching the story that I'm against music, that I'm against game music. Like, I love game music. I'm like one of the biggest defenders in the office.
I thought I tried to get that going.
You wanted to do game music trivia, and I said no way because you would just annihilate at it immediately.
I could host it.
Okay, well that sounds better. That sounds more durable.
Yeah.
But,
Adorable.
yeah, it sounds pretty adorable. You tried to
Anyway,
host it.
but speaking of that, people, thanks for the kind words about that video game music.
Yeah.
It was a very humble video game music sequence or like segment. We just did two tracks each, but
Yeah, and Reeves and JV picked the same track, so kind of
pretty close, which I liked. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. So thanks for the kind words on that. Even like a guy, I think his name was Russell, wrote in saying that like, hey, Megalovania specifically like really struck a chord with me, and it inspired him to go back to Undertale and finally like play through it because he
just get to that part.
Yeah, well, I don't know if he went down that road, but just because of the music specifically.
Sure. Hey, Dan Tack,
Hey,
how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Real good. Blade and Soul.
Yes.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure, a little bit.
What is this
When I
thing?
say a little bit. So it was a
Not a Tim Turi Resident Evil a little bit?
I don't have that much to say about it because I've just been playing it for the last 2 days or so.
Okay.
So as we know, it's a MMORPG. It came out in Korea several years ago, so this isn't new.
North Korea.
I don't know. Korea, okay? It's a Korean game. So it's a martial arts MMORPG, right?
Jade Empire?
Similar.
Okay.
If that can give you a good reference. Like this is Kung Fu, okay? So
I know Kung Fu.
right, exactly. I know Kung Fu. So you pick one of 7 classes and you go through, and it's a really, the combat in this game sets it apart. It might be the best combat that I've had in an MMORPG.
I don't know. It's a high bar.
It is. There's plenty of other stuff.
There's
plenty of other stuff about the game that you can complain about, and I'm sure I'll get annoyed with it. I'll start seeing cracks in the facade soon.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
What was the previous holder of the best combat in
Best
MMOs?
combat
Like
in MMO? I don't know, probably-
WildStar or
WildStar had very good combat.
Was it Terra people like the combat in?
Terra's combat was supposed to be the new action hotness, but again, some of the Eastern games are very grindy, so that really dulls it. And this game could get that way too as I get into it. But right now the combat is just extremely awesome. Like it's so much fun. Like I'm playing the class that so I'm basically a combination of like Astaroth from Soul Calibur and Zangief from Street Fighter.
what?
So I have a huge axe, I swing it around, I spin around. Sure, that's been done in MMOs, right? That's like a berserker. But like at the same time, I also knock enemies down, stun them, pick them up, smash them, and I can throw them into other enemies and knock them down, just headbutt them, crush them, pick them up so that the rest of my team can beat on them. I can even pick up like boss monsters and wail on them.
Really?
And the animation looks good?
Yeah, it looks great.
Okay.
It's beautiful looking game.
Yeah.
Great combat. I don't know about the rest yet. Like, MMO is always about the end game, right?
Right.
So I'm going to get there and it's going to be like, you've got to grind for 70 hours to get a gear piece. So, I'll just be like, okay.
Okay.
It, but
The animation on a scale from World of Warcraft to Bloodborne. Where is it?
so put it at like a 7. If
What game?
Bloodborne's a 10,
What
Okay,
game is
all right.
that? What's that? What is that 7 game?
that's the game. That's Blade and Souls.
That's this.
That is
okay.
specifically that one.
right.
That's good. It's good. This
I guess I wanted the 8 or the 6.
because MMOs again. You talk about animations, and it's just like,
Yeah, well,
man, it's the whole spectrum.
We're comparing it to a game that's 11 years old, or 12 years old. That's not,
no,
Is
man.
this one of those MMOs that's ashamed to be an MMO and it's trying to hide it as much as possible?
No, this is a straight up MMO. Like, really cool. Like, you're dungeon finding, you're crafting, you're just killing stuff for quests. It's,
Horrific UI.
yeah, UI might not be
Okay.
great, but it works for the system. Again, the combat might suck you in. That's it. Like, the rest of the stuff, I was not initially impressed with this game. I was just like, okay, here's another one of these. We've played this game before, right?
You'd say yourself in the mirror.
Yeah, I sit there and I'm like, okay, another one. All right, let's
we
do
can
it.
do this.
How much time have you
Let's
put
do it.
into
It's just Lineage again. It's another, I don't know, probably like 10 hours at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
With an MMO, that's a drop in the bucket. But I got to say, like I said, a lot of the other stuff, the questing, none of this stuff is really original, but the combat, it just really feels great.
Subscription?
So no subscription. It's free to play.
Oh, cool.
So
Right on.
if you are
free
into,
games.
if you want to try it, I highly recommend. If you're an MMO player, certainly. If you're not in MMOs, but like,
What if you're a martial artist?
then I don't think it's for you.
Okay, probably
Too
should go
busy
train.
working out to play
Yeah.
video games.
But yeah, even the movement in the game, like you don't like get mounts or anything. You fly through the air. It's straight up like a crazy kung fu movie.
I like
right?
that.
Like treetop to treetop?
Yes.
That's
Treetop to
kind of
treetop.
awesome.
It's
Lots
pretty
of,
sweet.
Lots of spinning.
Hopefully I can show it to you sometime.
All right.
No,
I'm interested.
I'm good.
So,
Tim's out.
other than a continuing sick love affair with Amplitude and Minecraft on PS4, it's been my life the last like 3 weeks. It's absurd.
And also Minecraft.
Well, that's
left field
in there, yeah.
Oh, we're getting into Minecraft now.
No, we don't need to get into it. It's still just the best. Like genuinely climbing the list of like my favorite games of all time.
Wait,
Like,
real quick. Had you never played it before?
No,
or-
I did. I did on the PC version, but it was before even the 1.0 release.
Okay.
I think is when I spent the most time with it.
So
And I
it's
had to
just the
find
first time you've like gone head first. Like I'm going all in for a long time.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I probably put like 15, 20 hours into it. Gotcha. Back then. But this is also the first time like playing with friends, which just like changes it. We don't even talk about Minecraft.
Hey, we should talk about it. It's a great game.
It's the best game. Probably the best game ever made. But outside of those, I was going to say that I've been playing Oxenfree. You guys know this game?
Yeah,
I'm aware of it.
I've had it pitched to me like Telltale meets horror meets John Hughes movies, kind of.
That was Kim's opening line for a review. She gave it a 7.75.
Okay, I've not read that yet.
Yeah. The review rates itself, apparently, because Tim can guess it.
No, she told me that. She pitched it to me that way.
Yeah, totally. So it's like former Disney and former Telltale folks, and it's 5 high schoolers, I guess. The age is a little bit up in the air. But they go to this island to like have a bonfire and drink and eat pot brownies and pretty adult
Sounds
script.
kind of Life is Strangey.
It is a little bit Life is Strangey, but it has a really fascinating perspective where it feels like, imagine like Life is Strange meets Sword and Sorcery.
That is so bizarre.
So puzzle elements, like
the puzzles are very light. Basically,
you can tweet out
Sword and Sorcery is like super vague.
Yeah,
like,
but I'm actually just talking about perspective. Having like a small character on a big screen, that is the perspective, and you're walking around this island and solving mysteries.
Like below, would you put that in? Okay.
It's not, the characters aren't that small, but it's an interesting perspective where they don't have to go heavy on the animations that way. But what I really love this game for is the dialogue system. So I always have like 3 prompts, and you can walk around the entire time that you're talking. And it does a really good job of like letting you interrupt other people by saying something or like responding, or like something shocking happens, you can respond to that instead of letting them continue their point. Like, it feels like a Robert Altman movie where people are constantly interrupting each other. It doesn't feel like the normal crappy video game way of interrupting where somebody's dialogue just like naturally stops. Like somehow I'm trying to figure out what it is. If it's just that they don't stop it that millisecond, let it trail a little bit.
It's all voiced?
Yeah. And the voice acting is a little too clean for my likes. It feels very much like we hired a voice actor off Craigslist and I'm playing a high school boy, but it's fine. But overall, I'm really enjoying it. Like they go to the island, they start to encounter some mysterious stuff, and it gets supernatural and it gets weird in some of my favorite ways that stories can get weird. But I haven't finished it quite yet. It's a pretty short experience, maybe like 4 hours or something. And I'm right at the end, but I wasn't able to finish it last night. Kim wasn't happy with the way that it wrapped up for her. There's a lot of questions, and she thought that the way she was pushing the story, that it didn't react to that in a satisfying way. But if you're looking for a new take on an adventure game,
with a horror twist.
With a horror twist. It's more, I wouldn't call it scary. It's more just kind of spooky or weird at times. Like I'm a complete wuss, and I played it late last night, and I was like, oh, this is just interesting scary. It's not jump scare scary.
It makes me feel like a bad person because I haven't played Kentucky Route Zero, and this is reminding me. For some reason, they're like going into a similar quadrant in my head.
Totally.
I need to make a list.
Yeah, I would love to play Kentucky Route Zero as well.
Yeah.
But that's Oxenfree. You should check it out if you're looking for a new type of adventure game where the puzzles, every puzzle involves tuning in with a radio. You have a radio and you turn it into a different frequency. So you know that thing in games where you're trying to find the exact right frequency on a radio and it'll vibrate when you get closer and you have to hone in? If you like doing that, Oxenfree is the game for you.
What
I'm going to pick some locks in
is
Skyrim.
your frequency?
It's Amplitude, actually. That's my frequency these days.
It's a Frequency Fear Factory song reference.
There we go, from 2001. All right, everybody.
Timely.
You guys ready to move on to emails?
Yes.
Sure.
Some good ones this week.
All right, can't wait.
Welcome back to the Game Informer Show. We have emails. You sent us emails. Now we're gonna read them and have conversations about them. You asked us some questions, maybe a fun little story you told us. I don't know.
This tone is so weird.
This is my
I don't
favorite.
know.
This is my favorite part of the show.
What kind of emails we got?
We're starting the podcast with emails.
Let me see. No,
We're starting off with emails.
No, here Ben. Oh, also Ben Reeves is here for our second segment, the
Second
email segment.
What?
Kyle had to go.
He was sacked.
He's got a kid or something.
Wow, that's harsh, man.
Did we hit him with the sack of kids?
No, he is now an NFL quarterback, and he was immediately sacked, and his spinal cord was
Got
severed.
fired from that. faster than he
Okay,
got fired
let's
from
get a
here.
question on the table.
Okay. So if you have an email for us, it's podcast@gameinformer.com. We had some good ones this week. Specifically, a lot of love for the video game music segment on the podcast. Thank you for that.
How convenient.
So let's kick in with Drew from Massachusetts. All right, he's talking about the video game music part. All right. Anyway, what did your? Sorry, I had to look past it.
Did you guys already talk about how much Hanson hated
Hey,
that?
video game music
I love
rocks.
that.
Video game music is great,
I'm
guys.
not against video game music. I don't know how many times I gotta say it.
I don't know.
Anyway, what did your parents think of video games and the amount of time you spent playing them when you were growing up? I know for me personally, my parents probably regretted buying me a Game Boy. Thanks for the great work, Drew from Massachusetts.
I don't have a good story for
Man,
that.
Drew, that's a tough one.
Yeah, they weren't. I don't think my parents were big fans of it. Like they're big on like cribbage, and the boring games. And so it was always just a slight annoyance. Like, oh, why do you keep playing this PlayStation 1? What is that? And I'd try and show them because my dad likes football. So I was like, hey, in the off season, I can simulate the Minnesota Vikings going against the Packers, like AI versus AI and NFL Game to 98. Let's watch that together. And be like, I'm good.
Why would you want to watch a simulation? Why didn't
I
you
was
try
trying to get my dad involved.
Why didn't you try to play it with him?
I get it.
He wouldn't want to. He would not play.
single
He would
tear rolls down
refuse
your
to play.
cheek.
Yeah, I
Your
get it.
dad refuses to play.
I tried to play Game Day with my dad, and it was a train wreck.
Yeah.
We just tried once, and it was the worst thing.
It was worst day.
Worst day. Game Day, worst day? That's the joke?
Yeah, that's not
All right, pretty good. For me, like I think about parents giving gifts like this, and maybe they look at the way that my brother played video games. Like he'd play like the Sega Master System and Atari like a little bit, and like he'd do it when it was like a rainy day or something, and he'd move on. And then I think
Lame.
I wonder it. Yeah, come on, Jim. But I wonder if parents love, and gift givers in general, love to give an awesome gift at like Christmas or a birthday or something, and like a kid, like everyone's seen the Nintendo 64 kid open up that present on YouTube or whatever, that old footage from the 90s, and the kid loses his mind.
Gotta love that
parents,
video.
Parents live for those moments, but it's like, okay, you gave the kid the annoying fire truck that just screeches, and you realize that I wish I hadn't given them this gift. But video game systems, if you give it to the right kid, end up being like the best gift in the world because they become infinitely fascinated and enthralled with it. And
they lock themselves in their
they lock themselves in the room and
drink
like,
some wine with the missus.
I like where this is going.
yeah, that's right.
The 8-year-old kid.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
All I'm saying is like it can be too good of a gift sometimes. And if you have like a really like brat kid that doesn't understand like when to listen to your parents, then like I could
stop
see how
drinking wine.
that'd be a nightmare. Yeah, right.
So I
a vicious
never
cycle.
really had that problem. I was a beer guy, but my parents also didn't really give me a lot of video game gifts. I got an NES for Christmas one year, which was pretty good, except that was also the year that the SNES came out, and so I was like, oh, that's why I got it, because it was like super cheap and it was like $50. But they never, after that year, they almost never bought me video games as a gift.
They're
which
trying
is
to
kinda
subtly
sad.
wean you off of them.
Well, that was the other thing is like they were not at all. They didn't really seem to care how much time I spent playing them. They just didn't want to buy them for
Like
me.
you don't feel like they
I see.
wanted to actively encourage it.
Yeah, they wouldn't actively encourage it until my parents got divorced. It's kind of a dark subject, but like when I was 13, my parents got divorced, and then my mom would use it as like a treat of like, hey, if you clean your room when I get home, we can go out and rent a game. It was always renting a game. We'd always go to Blockbuster and like rent a game.
Okay.
So that was kind of nice to have them on the weekend.
Then did your dad give you any gifts or?
I mean, my parents getting divorced is the best thing that ever happened to me. So
Oh, NFL Best Day.
I have a serious question though. Is that like, did your dad reward you with
So my
games?
dad, I think I had a story that I told last week or 2 weeks ago where my dad bought me Shinobi.
Oh, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah,
Okay,
that's
he
right.
did.
So like he bought me a couple of games, but I think because I was so bad at like, this isn't the one I
Yeah,
wanted.
yeah,
like
yeah.
I don't think I got one. After
Okay,
that.
because I was just wondering if like it'd be weird if like, hey, growing up, my parents never really got me games, and then a divorce happens, and then like one parent super gives you games, and the other one like
Yeah.
doesn't at all. It's like, that's
my mom never bought me a game, but
Okay.
my dad would sometimes.
okay. All right.
And then my dad would also play with us occasionally, and he was always terrible. But I always really, really appreciated
Yeah.
that he played with me.
Yeah.
It goes a
does-
long
if
way.
you are a parent, play with your kids.
With-
For love of Christ.
You
they
can
will
try it.
They will adore you.
It was
for
me just desperately trying to get my dad to play like Sonic with me, like control Tails, you won't die. And my dad would be like, no hand-eye coordination. Like, it's just the ship has sailed.
Totally. Like I tried to get my dad into Tetris. Like he's a big problem solver guy. He's like, oh man, you're gonna love Tetris. It's the simplest game ever. Can't go wrong. Still, he will not do it. He refuses to touch anything electronic.
Wii bowling.
It's just,
Still
it's so,
get into it.
That's a
It's
good
so
point.
frustrating. No, Wii bowling even nothing. It's
Really?
like it's so frustrating. People who put that clear divide between analog games and digital games. You know,
Well, it's also
just like,
anyone that
that's
lock-
a chasm I can't cross.
It's anyone that shuts themselves off to anything. I
Yeah.
think to a certain extent, unless it's hardcore drugs. You know,
And you don't
And
leave
even
anything
then.
out, you know?
Yeah,
But it's so frustrating. Like over Christmas, you'd be like, we've been playing Sequence, the board game, for like 8 hours. Like, let's play Jackbox Party Pack. Literally, all you have to do is type a word into your phone, and fun will come out of it. And everyone's like, video game, this is gonna be complicated. Let's keep playing Sequence and bore ourselves to tears.
where it was board games like like someone has to play it by themselves for 5 hours one night before they can teach it to a friend. But anyway,
More
yeah.
like board game.
For me, I feel like my parents didn't really think much of my video gaming period until I got a job doing this. I think I've said that before. I just don't think that they like really thought much of it at all.
Yeah.
And now they're so proud of their little
Didn't
Timmy.
think that
right.
anything would ever come
Oh,
of that.
thank God I bought all those Sega games. Yes. My mom is a giant chicken.
Chicken in here?
Hey, gang. This is from Justin. I am new to the world of podcasts, and my
I'm
love
new to the world.
of video games led me to find you. I have listened to a few of your most recent shows and thoroughly enjoyed them. I'm writing to ask you a question. Do you folks know who I can write to and pester about getting an HD remaster for PSN, Xbox Live, Nintendo eShop of the classic side-scroller Sunset Riders? I loved that game in the
Whoa, what?
arcades, as well as the SNES and
great
Genesis, and would love a version with updated graphics, yada yada.
Sincerely, Ben
Is
Hanson.
this a joke?
This is clearly a
Did
joke.
he just start listening to this podcast? How many times does Sunset Riders come up on this new podcast?
I don't know, but
It's like
that's
every
lot.
other week.
It's
A
Ben
lot.
Hanson's favorite game, so I decided that I would see Ben. Do
Yeah.
you know where he should go?
I think you email Dan Tack at GameInformer.com.
Is that it?
I'll take care of it.
Well,
Yeah.
the unfortunate news, Justin, is that Konami owns the rights to Sunset Riders, and I think that you'd have better luck going to Mars. Couldn't think.
No,
That's probably more likely.
We're gonna make
You
it
have
happen.
better luck falling into a time machine and traveling back to the Old West and becoming a cowboy in a pink poncho yourself.
I would
So you're
love,
saying there's a chance.
It's definitely happening.
with all the Kickstarters out there, all the indie teams, all the kids loving games growing up and developing their own games, someone's going to make a spiritual successor to Sunset Riders with like the neon bullets, just the flamboyant early 90s colors. That's all I want.
soundtrack.
It's a great game.
Yes.
Yeah, that is your best, like Dusk Devils.
But I will say,
Dusk, what's a good name for it? Let's workshop it. Like Sunset Riders.
right,
Sunset.
right.
It's got to be
Sunset Cowboys.
Lonesome Cowboys are like
Sunrise Raiders.
What is that? What is the one genuine knockoff that Konami also made?
Is it
no the Moo Milkers of Meadow County or whatever?
Cowboys of Moo Mesa.
Yeah,
That's
Cowboys
it.
of Moo Mesa. Basically, if he's never played that, just play Cowboys of Moo Mesa, and it'll feel like
Good
a
point.
sequel. Or play Mystic Warriors, which is genuinely the
That's
spiritual
true.
successor.
He also brings up Knights of the Round, which I think might be in this vein. But
never
anyway,
played that.
It's somewhat in. It's sort of.
Is it?
Yeah, it is.
Hanson, did you ever talk about how you almost went and bought the rights to Sunset Riders last time you were in Japan?
We can't talk about that.
yeah, we
No, I totally did
sorry.
talk about
Next
that.
next question. This is from Max from Arizona. What's a game that you utterly sucked at but still managed to pull you in? For me, Rainbow Six Siege has taken this spot as I often struggle to get kills. But darn if it isn't a blast. Thanks for all the free funny, Max from Arizona.
This is an easy one for me. Dark Souls.
Yeah.
But you don't suck at
But
it.
you don't really.
Well, no, but
did.
at first.
But I did.
But no, when everybody
sucks at it.
Hold on a
Everybody
second.
sucks at
Ben,
video
Ben,
games.
shut up.
You shut up.
Shut up. Of course, everyone sucks at Dark Souls right away. That's the point. Your first From Software game, or your first Souls game, is 10 times harder than your second Souls game.
I'm saying I think the spirit of the question is you continue to suck at it. Everybody sucks at a game
You
when they start
continue
out.
to suck at it.
No, I still don't. I don't think that's true. Everyone gets better unless you're a complete moron.
I don't think that was. Maybe I misunderstood the question though.
That's what
No, I
implied
think
it.
he answered it correctly. I think it was a good answer. For me, like FTL, like I continued to play it. We talked about it before. That was a good example. XCOM, like everyone has that conversation where you played XCOM and you got into an impossible situation. You can't win anymore, but you start over and keep playing and use the lessons you learned to start again.
I did that so many times. That's my number one example. Is like I love Enemy Unknown, and I insist on playing an Iron Man mode because I think it's really
You're a
fun.
good man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an Iron Man. But I restarted on normal like 4 or 5 times and just kept getting wiped again and again and again. So eventually I just had to beat that game on easy. But like easy Iron Man, it was still fine. I still
still beat it.
lost like all of everybody I cared about.
Well, you're
so-
playing Iron Man.
And that's the good thing about Darkest Dungeon
Yeah.
is that even as you get destroyed over and over again, you don't have to restart. Your town stays.
It
healthy.
is Iron Man mode.
It's automatically
Meta
Iron Man,
progression,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say for me, Ninja Gaiden, not the original, but the Xbox one.
Oh, okay.
First Xbox one. I remember that coming out and it just looked gorgeous. I think that drew me in, and I remember playing it and just being like, it felt so brutally hard at the time, which compared to something like Dark Souls might not be the case. But
Right.
I just died a lot. The whole way through the game. Somehow I finished the game, but I even remember the last level. I was like, I don't feel like I'm any better than when I started.
That's a good example too. The other one I'd throw in there is like the early Warcrafts, like RTS is just like coming to terms with those and being an idiot kid that would just like, all right, I'll just make a bunch of warriors at
Online?
once. and send them.
Yeah, we're talking about online play, or
No, we're talking just single player.
single play. All you
terms
did is
of
just build demons or water elementals. You can't lose.
Yeah, you're wrong, Tim.
I did do that eventually, but when I was younger, I was not quite as smart. Next one is from Craig. With Game of the Year over now and the Golden Peepo Awards finishing up, that is a reference to our, I watched the entire Overblood Super Replay group on Facebook. I found myself wondering about the GI team's discussions for these. Are there games from 2015 that you wish you would have fought harder for on the list, or that you thought should have been higher? Is there a game that you couldn't get into but others enjoyed a lot? Personally, Craig says he loved Life is Strange, and it's one of my favorite games of last year, but it seems like very few people share that sentiment. Love, Craig.
I feel like you
the
have
love
3
affair.
questions there.
Here we
It's
go.
just basically what we should talk about is things that you felt
Yeah.
like you should have fought harder for.
So I'll start this one off, and I don't think I could have fought any harder, but Bloodborne got
Right.
robbed as I expected it will
For Game of the Year.
And yeah, for Game of the Year.
Witcher 3 is a good game.
Witcher 3 is an amazing game.
It's a great game, but Bloodborne's a fantastic.
Bloodborne is not just a game. Bloodborne is it's a cohesive. Everything in that game is pretty much perfect.
There's no redundant material in it. Nothing's wasted.
Yeah.
And then we're only talking about the main game, and there's the Chalice Dungeon.
Yeah, screw you don't even need the Chalice Dungeon.
That's what I'm saying. But it's still there, and
it's
some
there.
people really like it.
So you regret not fighting harder?
No, we could. We
I feel like
fought
you
as
guys
hard
fought
as we
pretty
could.
hard. Well, you did, Tim. I don't know if Dan Tack did.
I kind of agree. I think Dan Tack.
yeah, Dan Tack.
You were laying back more than I expected.
Okay, guys. Well,
Took
that's
it
cool.
laying down.
I certainly did not.
It seems like you read the room better and realized like this is a. This is an interesting
we
fight.
weren't going to
Not
win.
worth
Th-
fighting.
There was. I mean, when we got the temperature, it was just like, okay. I guess I'm coming in here with like 2 guns against a rocket launcher, a BFG, and a helicopter.
I
What
like
if,
it.
What if Mr. Smith, when he went to Washington, had that attitude, Dan?
I don't know.
What if he sat down? What if he didn't filibuster in that ending?
I don't know. I don't know what would have happened.
I mean, basically,
We would have sat in the room for another day before Witcher 3 still got it.
anyway, the end of the day is like, what does Game Informer think is Game of the Year? And
Right.
there's more to Game Informer than just Dan and I.
We had to ask Game Informer.
That's
It's true. Although Andy was on your side.
Andy liked Bloodborne quite a
Andy
bit.
McNamara.
More than I thought. I guess I didn't hear him talk about it too much. I was like out of left
Yeah.
field, like in those meetings. Like, I guess he's a huge Bloodborne fan. All right.
Yeah,
We have all our-
I didn't even know he played it.
We have all of our personal top 10s.
With Bloodborne, you got to get your
online.
secret allies aligned, you know?
That's right.
True.
I kind of wish I'd
The rest of the staff doesn't have enough insight.
fought more for Metal
good.
Gear Solid, actually. Just because, not because I think it could have like turned the tide, like you guys are saying, but I just feel like people brush that one off aside pretty quickly.
It was frustrating. It's my number 1 game of the year, and it's just reading that room. It was tough because it's such an uneven, like qualified amount of praise that you want to put towards that. Where it's like, it's an amazing game. Yeah, that is structured really funky. Yeah, there's some weird holes in there.
All these updates and the insurance thing
Yeah.
and Forced Online, like the Konami actively making it worse after development is
That-
or after
that's
release is like, man, that's such a what other Game of the Year discussion would ever involve that? Like this is I feel like it's a first for a contender to like get actively worse as
Yeah,
time goes on.
it's a weird one. When I was thinking about it, it wasn't for a big award like Game of the Year or anything, but we're talking about like top 10 remasters of the year. And I've expressed my frustration with Grim Fandango before on this podcast, and also my love affair with Grim Fandango. But we had a big back and forth about that, about whether or not it should be in top 10 remasters. And I was coming from the angle of it totally should, because it went from 0 to being playable again. I think that is an honorable mention in the remasters category. But it's like, well, God of War 3 is a better game, and now it runs at 60 frames a second.
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, but
Just incrementally.
no one cares about that. No one's excited about God of War 3 coming back.
I'm really
That's a
excited.
good point. I was with you too, Hanson. I was like, this game should be on this list, and here's why. Even if it's number 10, like we didn't rank them, but even if it's like the last slot, like we should give it. It's a good game. Like I still stand by it. It's a fun.
At times it's the best, and
world.
at times it's the worst.
It's humorous. It's like a really cool looking world. It's cool characters.
Yeah. Also,
so-
the free game on PlayStation 4 this month.
yeah.
Oh yeah, that's
Is that over?
No, I'm
or is
going to
that-
check it out.
No,
I
that's
think-
going on now.
I would recommend downloading and playing it with a walkthrough,
Mine was
which is a weird thing to say, but
That's
I don't
so
normally
unfun.
walk through. But yeah.
All right.
I think it is a crime. It is a mortal sin that Nick Valentine did not make the top 10 characters of 2015. He is the synth detective from Fallout 4. He's whoever knew that Fallout needed a robot detective, but damn it, I should have known that. Like he's perfect. He's absolutely perfect, and like the most heavy-handed kind of Sin City noir kind of way. And Yeah, I thought he was fantastic, and he's such a great like embodiment of the Fallout 4's main drama revolves around synths and their integration into like society and stuff like that, and trust with them, and like Nick Valentine is like the embodiment of it, and they pull it off really well. And the fact that he didn't even break top 10 is I thought kind of a crime. But it's not just my list.
Absolutely.
Next up here is kind of these are together, kind of. I consider these two together. This one is from Emily K. Hi, everyone. I love the podcast. And as a Minnesotan stuck in Florida, I find your accents are a nice little homesickness cure.
Oh,
Tim and Kim especially, which is interesting because Kim's from Chicago.
Kim is not
She
from
fakes it.
Minnesota.
Yeah. I was wondering if you'd humor me and name these things. I think that
Wow, this is speaking spell.
we should all take turns saying these things.
With a Minnesota
I
accent.
don't
should
even have
start-
an accent.
Well, I think it's a good compare and contrast.
I can't.
We'll start with Ben.
Oh gosh.
Ben Hanson, move down towards
Okay.
me.
Oh, don't you know?
So it'll be Ben Hanson, Ben Reeves, Dan Tack, and then I.
Yeah.
Okay.
So name these things, everyone. Take your turn. Circular baked bread with a hole in the middle, sometimes eaten with lox.
A donut?
I'd say
very easy.
I'd say circular baked
Lefse?
bread with
A bagel?
hole in the middle,
Yes, that's what it
sometimes
is. Okay.
eaten with cream cheese.
Yeah,
yes,
there you
that's
go.
what it is.
A bagel?
Bagel?
Bagel.
Bagel.
Boggle. What is
What?
bagel?
How
Another
do-
way
how
to
do
pronounce that?
Minnesotans say
Bagel. Anyway, so
Boggle?
they didn't ask us to break these all down.
Bulgle?
We're just saying them right
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Bugbear?
A comfy blanket tied between two palm trees.
Okay. Easy.
Oh, a hammock.
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 Hammock. A sack. The thing you carry groceries in.
A
Bag.
bag?
Bag.
Bag. Bag.
It's a bag.
Yeah.
So a bag? Is that how people...
Your editor-in-chief's name.
Andy McNamara?
Yeah, McNamara.
Do they just want us to pronounce
I don't know.
his name?
So weird.
Just let's get it all out here.
Andy Mack.
Andy McNamara.
Mac Tack.
A game in which groups of players sit in a circle while another player walks around
Dice.
tapping each. Oh,
Duck,
this
duck,
thing.
goose.
Duck, Grey Duck. Yeah.
Oh.
It's
Because
a
Grey
Minnesotan
Duck
thing.
is the Minnesota thing.
My
All right, that's Emily K. Let's just go. Let's click into the other one
That was
really
the coolest
quick.
question I've ever heard.
We're just reeling.
This is another one. This is Adam from Lexington, Kentucky. I just want to try to find the truth here. Hey guys, love the show. So I noticed your Minnesotan accents for some time now. We got two of these. But
Also, he loves Cowboy Showdown.
But only on-
Sunset Riders. damn it.
Cowboy Showdown.
Are we gonna get some locks
Ben
with
Reeves,
this
can
one?
you just shut up for 1 second?
No, I cannot.
But only on certain words. I also realize that sometimes it's difficult to hear one's own accent. Here's the game. I'm going to need Ben, Tim, and the two guests to one at a time say the following phrase.
What?
Tim, did
is
you send these
happening?
in? What,
No,
what
I
the fuck is
didn't. These are just two disparate emails. Like they're just okay. It's both Dagger bags.
What?
both dagger bags?
Dagger bags?
Yeah,
Both dagger bags?
Both dagger bags.
Both dagger bags.
both Dagger
Both
bags.
dagger bags.
Both
dagger bags.
dagger bags.
Both dagger bags. Does this say something if you say it really fast?
What world are we in right now? Is this
Name
video
is
game
wrong.
podcast?
The goal is to determine whether or not you can hear your own accent.
Is it a Star
This isn't
Wars
meant to be
reference?
demeaning. I'm also not trying to call people out on improper pronunciation or anything. I'm just fascinated by dialects and accents, language. I think the way the editors talk is a lot of fun, actually. Anyway, that is that.
The only thing that
From Adam.
I hear that.
Thank you,
I
Adam.
love Minnesota and I love the accent and whatnot. But the one thing I didn't know until I started at Game Informer was that apparently, I don't know if it's an upper Midwestern thing or just a Minnesotan thing, but the whole borrow situation.
Oh,
where, like,
yeah.
the word lent and lend is just not in my vocabulary.
They
I had
weren't
no
in
idea
mine
it was a
either.
thing.
I got it beaten out of me by the editors here. I would say,
Saying,
would
"Oh,
you
I borrowed that,
would you
yeah."
borrow that to me?
Right.
And it's loan. And now that's completely been nuked from my vocabulary. And now I do say loan.
I don't.
correctly.
F it. I like
Well,
it.
you're
the
not.
weird little
You're not.
regionalism.
You don't have to write that out.
It makes you
So,
sound
yeah.
like an infant when you say, "Can you
Good.
borrow
That's
that
it's
to me?"
insane. It is probably the most bizarre bit
Yeah.
of Minnesota dialect that I've ever encountered.
I didn't even know it existed till now, but from now on I'm using it.
borrow.
Like, yo, can you borrow me a slice of pizza?
Hey yo.
And to me, like that clicks.
that's what you
it's
say.
totally normal. Like you
Yeah,
say that,
totally.
and I would not even blink. I would never correct
I've
you.
never even heard of this.
Or it's more like someone's like, "Oh, where's your copy of Fargo season 1? Oh, I borrowed that to Tim last week." Like,
Hey, would
that's
you
just-
borrow? Would you borrow me your pen? And that sounds to me that felt more natural
All right.
than eating like a slice of pumpkin pie.
or lefse?
Why are you eating
Or
that
lox.
pie? This
No,
seems
we
like
got
an
a
inappropriate
bagel and
time.
lox. That's it. I'm gonna get a giant bagel with lox.
I
after
don't know
this.
what locks are.
They're fish or something, aren't they? Isn't it
Is
like
this a
smoked
Swedish thing?
salmon?
This is so. Okay,
Anyway.
okay.
Well, moving right along.
it's locks of
it was
hair.
that was a ringing success of a segment there.
This is great.
What I found out is it's not bags, it's bag. That is how you pronounce it, bag. Or an evil old hag would be a hag. Like
Yes.
it sounds wrong when I say it, but it
sounds like you're like-
it's a bag. It's hag.
You say it, you sound like a valley girl or something.
Magnum. It's not magnum.
What?
It's magnum.
Yes, it is.
That's hot baloney.
That is correct.
This is what
Magnum.
I've learned. I don't agree with it either.
Magnum?
It's
Yeah, Magnum. Magnum PI.
Do we
No,
talk
it's
about
Magnum
video games
PI.
here?
What do
Or?
Ugh, I've never thought of that one.
He's from Hawaii. That's how they pronounce it.
Oh, Hawaii?
Hawaii.
Dan. You asked
Hawaii.
if we talk about video games.
I'm asking if we have any other questions. This is cool and all, but
Do you think it's cool?
Dan's about to flip
Yeah, I
this
am.
table.
I actually do think it's cool. I do.
Thanks.
Legit.
All right, this one's from Jameson. Hello, Game Informer crew. I recently finished the Double Fine adventure documentary series.
Oh, my God.
And Ben Hanson is right.
Oh, no.
It is fantastic.
The best.
But it seemed to me, and I may be wrong, that Tim playing the game in front of Tim Schafer was really uncomfortable for him. Is it hard to play games in front of developers? Furthermore, is it hard to make friends with developers knowing one day you may have to give their games a bad review? Thanks, Jameson. I think the interesting thing here is that, like, yeah, I made an appearance on that episode, and it was super bizarre because, like, I think I was uncomfortable to some degree, but not like completely uncomfortable. I think there is a certain amount of discomfort playing a game in front of someone.
Absolutely.
Especially when it's not done, and like one that had such a kind of storied development as the Double Fine adventure, which came on to be Broken Age. But like hear me out. I have never met Tim Schafer before.
Yeah.
I had growing up playing, Full Throttle was like one of my favorite adventure games, and I loved Full Throttle. I had played his games before. And, I show up to Double Fine's office, and I'm immediately greeted by, like, I call the guy that I'm supposed to contact at the office, but he doesn't come down. It's the film crew that comes down and wires me up before I go up. And so then I have to go up and know that I'm on camera on the documentary series that I've been watching up to that very episode. Because, well, one, if I'm writing about this game, I need to have full information about it, too, which meant watching the documentary. Also, the documentary is awesome. And then it's like, okay, now I'm going to meet Tim Schafer on camera and then play the game with him sitting. It was mostly the fact that I was being filmed on a documentary that I was watching is just bizarre.
It was weird also because, I mean, that documentary is my favorite thing ever. We've talked about it multiple times. But it was weird because it's like being into Fargo Season 2 and then, on the 4th episode of Fargo Season 2, Tim Turi's on it. It's just like, it was such a weird thing just have you shoehorned in there.
About
I
all
kept
those people
waiting.
I
When are they
killed.
going to bring that journalist character back? Like,
Yeah, right.
this is like a one-shot wonder.
But
I
my
think-
favorite part, I know like the film crew's favorite part of your segment on that documentary is when they're pitching names for the game to you because it's still Double Fine Adventure. And you're like, some of them you're like chuckling and like nodding, like, that's pretty good. And then they list Broken Age. And it's just like blank stare. And then they move on to the next one. So it's nice to have that
I
documented.
was never
now.
entirely sold on the name
I still
Broken
don't think
Age.
I like it.
Yeah, I feel like it's tough because you look at Tim Schafer runs down his naming conventions in that documentary where it's mostly like columns of words, like one thing that will describe another thing. And you look at all his game names like Psycho, Knots, Broken Age, Full Throttle, Broken Legend, I'm sorry, Brutal Legend. Like you can see the way that he creates these game names, and like I think that I think Broken Age is a fine name. I don't know if it was all the way there.
There's a manatee ball pit somewhere.
That's true. Anyway, but I thought that it was it's always a little uncomfortable, but when you're being filmed,
Also, just going into a studio is uncomfortable. Like on cover story trips, it's always like, okay, we got a lot to tackle in this day. How's this going to go? Like, we're kind of invading their space. They have to get into interview mode when they've been crunching on developer mode. Dan Tack, you're shaking your head a lot.
Oh, I was going to just semi recently, that From Software trip. That was a blast and a half, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well,
Look, that was a mess.
yeah, and you know
out
what?
of all the trips to bring up,
It's like meeting a developer and interviewing them and stuff like that. I don't think that ever really registers for me as far as like reviewing a game. Me personally,
Yeah, and it never should, and it doesn't.
it
So.
doesn't. And if I ever had an inkling that it might, I would just not do the review.
as a journalist, you don't really make friends.
That's true. Who would want to
don't.
hang out with us?
Yeah, you don't.
You have no friends, just potential stories.
That's true. This one's interesting. This one, someone's asking for our advice here. This is from John.
All right, John.
This is a massive email. I'm not going to read all of it, but the gist is that he never owned a Nintendo console.
Okay.
He doesn't really know why.
So he doesn't have to now.
I think we get the idea,
That road's
But
Get the hell out.
He lives in Japan now, and that has currently inspired him to check out Japanese classics that everyone seems to rave about. He wanted to ask the professionals with a lifetime Nintendo experience under their belts 2 big questions, and really to get some recommendations. Number 1, what Nintendo console or consoles? Let's just keep it down to console. Should I go for to get the best Nintendo gaming experience?
You get a Wii U because then you get the entire Virtual Console and the Wii's library.
Yeah. So would you say that Virtual Console stuff doesn't count?
No, it totally does. He's looking for a purchase decision.
I think it does.
Yeah,
count.
I guess it would
gonna,
count.
I'm gonna go ahead and not include it and just say Super Nintendo.
Right. And you know what? In the games, and that's the next question, which 1 or 2 games within the Mario, Zelda, and Metroid franchises in particular should I start with? And this is where it gets cool, too, and why Wii U is a better choice. When I read this email, I thought Super Nintendo as well.
Right.
But you can play the important Mario games on Wii U. You can play with Ocarina of Time is on there.
That changes things that he's stuck with those franchises. Like I was going for he'd want to play, Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger. Stuff like that.
I think he's thinking of specific Nintendo
he's
first
okay.
party. Yeah, and the nice thing is Metroid, Super Metroid will be on there. More recently, Metroid Zero Mission's on there, so you can play the original Metroid remake.
Metroid Prime games are still really good.
Metroid Prime's on there.
So I don't know what's on Wii. Is Link to the Past on there?
Oh,
Yeah.
Then there you go. Yeah.
You start with Link to the Past
You definitely start with Link
and
to the
Super
Past.
Metroid.
So here are my suggestions for Mario: Super Mario World and Mario 64. I think Mario Galaxy is better, but Mario 64 is like.
Why would you
if
start
you're looking
there,
for
though?
fun, just play the Galaxy
Yeah,
games
play
and
Galaxy.
3D World and
All
call
right,
it a day.
Super Mario World and Super Mario Galaxy are the 2. I think.
Mario
Can
World
we
is, the
agree
best,
there?
is one of the best games of all time.
It's the best side-scrolling platform
Yeah.
ever. Zelda, I would say, well, Link to the Past.
I think Link to the Past is
And
is
Ocarina?
amazing.
And well, yeah, Ocarina's
Don't say Mask, right? I mean,
no. It's for me. It's between Wind Waker HD and
Oh,
Ocarina.
interesting.
Wind Waker HD is really good. I'm almost curious about the Twilight Princess remake that's coming out.
Yeah, that might be.
But that's not going to top Wind
I don't know. I
Waker.
mean,
I'd
been a long
say,
time
dude,
since I played that
it's
game.
it's Wind Waker for after.
Yeah, let's get weird.
Okay.
We go Wind Waker HD and Link to the Past.
Okay, and then
You wanna get
Metroid,
weird?
I'd say Super Metroid.
Definitely.
But if you're worried about if you play Super Metroid and you get lost and don't want to use a guide, Zero Mission does a better job of pointing you in the right direction, and so does Fusion. But Super Metroid is obviously the more landmark game.
And Prime
I
1.
played it again 2 years ago, and it still holds up pretty well.
It's amazing how good that
Yeah.
game looks still today.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would recommend Prime
and
too,
Prime.
just to check out that 3D world.
I go Prime first.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. I would say Super Metroid, just because to get the feel for what was that series all about to begin
And
with.
he did ask which ones you should start with. I think in general you should start with the older games
'Cause
and go to
then-
newer.
Prime has a lot of ways it pays homage to that
Let's
original.
all go on the table
And-
and pronounce the word homage.
Let's do it right now.
And he goes on to ask a lot of different questions, but I think we've answered a lot of his other questions. He has one follow-up question, which is where to start with Mega Man, since there's a huge amount of them.
Just
And,
play Legend and call it a day.
Mega Man X.
I would say that
I'm with.
I was gonna say X. I was gonna say you start with Mega Man X because I think that one is one of the oldest ones that sticks to the basic core formula and has more satisfying gameplay, and it's still just
Still got that new fresh coat of paint to
it's-
the old style.
It's so solid. And then I would probably go with the Legacy Collection and maybe Mega Man 2. But if not that, if you can track down Mega Man 9, Mega Man 9's so good. And Mega Man 10 had an easy mode for people that weren't familiar with those older games.
Remember the time that Mega Man Cross Street Fighter came out and people talked about it for a day and a half? It seemed like it should have been a bigger deal. I know it was that fan thing that they eventually sanctioned.
It
but
was
it's-
fun.
Yeah, it was crazy that Capcom gave the official stamp of
That
approval
was
on
super
that.
cool. And honestly, that was as for not knowing that thing was ever going to exist or happen. It was cool, but
Yeah.
it
How long
had
ago was
had
that?
some bugs. I was able to farm some Infinite E-Tanks and stuff like that.
What'd you ask? Chris?
Infinity.
When did that
Tanks.
come out?
2012, I would guess.
That was after
I'd have
Infinity
to-
left, or
I don't remember.
before?
Anyway, do you think that we've armed John? He actually, his last sentence is, I'm thinking the Wii U would be a good place to start.
And then he answers
so-
and has his exact prediction.
And case closed.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, John. This is Harris. What's the more horrifying enemy to go up against in real life? A xenomorph from Alien or a velociraptor from Jurassic Park?
Xenomorph, are you high?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to go with the Xenomorph.
Unless you're in a field of tall grass, then maybe
He didn't give any. He didn't give any
the
situation.
Velociraptor's faster, right?
Okay, all right. Here's the thing. I'm with you guys. A xenomorph.
I'll tell you what. You're dead either way.
impregnates a velociraptor.
That'd be
my!
cool.
And that's the closer
And it
of the
gets
movie.
infected by an
Busts out,
alien.
and then that's the end of the
And
first
it- and
movie.
yep, that's right. I think that the obvious choice is a xenomorph because they're known to be fast. They can hide. They can climb. They can jump super high. But maybe a velociraptor can jump higher. I don't know.
We could probably beat the Velociraptor with a table and a few chairs. Just push them against the door.
Are you kidding me, Dan Tack?
They can open the door. Don't
Shoot the glass!
Just don't shoot the glass, Harris.
What's the minimum thing that you would need to take down one-on-one a velociraptor?
Rocket launcher.
fist?
You would actually.
No,
need
this is Dan Tack.
You would need a high-powered weapon for sure.
You would, okay?
High-powered.
If you had like a
Star Killer
katana,
base.
you know,
No.
you could do it.
I mean, I probably could.
Right.
What if you just had a single velociraptor claw that
No.
cut you here?
And then you,
You know what I would do? I would just get like a 2x4 and be like, "Here, boy," and I'd wave it and stuff. And then I'd pretend to throw it, and it
Yeah.
would look in that direction. And then when it looked back, I'd shove the 2x4 long ways in their mouth, and then it would just be all like,
So this
"Oh
is
no!"
it's
and
a
then-
rank. It's a rancor. Now.
Correct. It's the Rancor fight.
and then you'd ride it
Yeah, exactly.
into the sunset.
And then bongos would start.
I mean, I
playing
just
over
think with
and
that question, either way, you're screwed. If we're talking just one.
well,
The answer is xenomorph. After that, it's a xenomorph with Velociraptor DNA, and then it's Velociraptor.
I think we're pretty good. You want to wrap up those questions there?
I got a couple more. I kind of want to
Yeah.
keep going. All right. Well, sorry. Do you want both of these, or do you want me to cut the one that was pointed towards you?
Uh-oh.
Well, no, we have to hear them both.
now we got it.
There you go. You got him.
This one's from Kelly from Huntington Beach, California. Insert nice compliments to the GI crew here. I don't really listen to music unless I'm in the car with the wife and or kids. Instead, I'm always listening to podcasts or books on tape. I have about 3 podcasts I never miss. GI Show is one, of course, and the rest of the time I listen to books on tape. Overdrive plus as many libraries as you can get a card for equals tons of free books on tape. That is a good point. The Overdrive app is awesome
on
for
tape.
that. These questions are mainly for Ben Hanson, but I would be interested in all answers. Number one,
What's this person's name again?
Kelly.
Kelly.
Number one, how many podcasts do you subscribe to, and how many do you always listen to each week?
Oh my God. So
pulling-
that I'm subscribed
is a
to,
great
that I'm
question.
interested in listening to, there's probably like 30
Holy
on my
holy
phone.
hell.
Really?
Yeah.
How is
That download
possible?
automatically each week?
Yeah.
How is that possible to keep up with?
Well, I don't
he's
listen.
constantly
I don't
listening.
listen to all of them. There's some where it's like, it's that future bias thing where like, oh, eventually I'm going to get around to this Smart Radio Lab episode. And realistically, I never do. I just listen to garbage most of the time. Just gaming stuff or comedy stuff or Adam
video
Carolla.
game garbage,
Yeah, but listen to like that I will get through every week. I mean, there's probably like 9 or 10.
That's insane.
for sure.
How many hours?
Through.
Assuming
It's
that
a
the
lot.
2-hour average.
Yeah, it's a lot.
That's insane, Ben.
I mean, not 2 hour average, but it's all over the place.
But you listen to them
but
in your
15
sleep.
hours at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
While you're
for sure, a
showering.
week easily. That's chump change.
And I know
I
that-
should try and actually. I have like a timer on my phone. I should start it every time I listen to a podcast and
Yeah.
get that total for a week.
Oh, your phone came with a timer, huh? Yeah, I think
New
that's
Samsung.
that's interesting. But obviously you do it. Everyone listens to a podcast while you're doing something else. So
Yeah.
it's not like time wasted.
I probably have
necessarily.
10 I subscribe to,
Okay.
and I have trouble keeping up with that. But
It's
so 30, I don't know how you do.
You should try not having a life and just staring out a window more because it's really
All right.
good. Or playing Minecraft.
That's a good idea.
I just
I'll
got
try
like
that.
3 or 4.
Minecraft's great.
It's like Giant Bombcast, 8-4 Play, Lore Podcast, which is like bi-weekly, and 8-4 is bi-weekly too, which
thing's
is
pretty
nice. VG Empire. Yeah, it's a good handful of them. What different topics do you subscribe to? Video games, tabletop games, guns, AFI Inside?
guns.
AFI.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's comedy and gaming. Maybe some smart stuff thrown in there, some fresh air and stuff like that. But
Yeah, Hanson mentioned Radio Lab. And
Yeah.
That's a good. one.
This American Life. I just subscribed to Gastropod, which is a fun food podcast. Actually, it's a history of food and technology. It's actually pretty good.
I just listened to an episode of the Rebel Force Radio, which is a pretty polished podcast. I started listening to their Force Awakens review stuff because people are tired of talking about Force Awakens, but I'm not tired about talking about
I'm certainly not tired of that.
Okay. But anyway, so it's just me not bugging my girlfriend and just listening to these podcasts instead of just bugging her with all these.
I hear a good thing about Star Wars Oxygen as a Star Wars podcast as well, and like I guess they do specific reviews of the Star Wars soundtracks. And I guess their episode all about Force Awakens soundtracks supposed to be really good.
Oh, I'll have to check that out because they plugged that on this because they had someone from it, the guy that does
Oh, okay.
like a Han voice for like the celebration thing,
Cool.
the Smugglers Run thing.
This is a good trick too, because now all those people who do those podcasts are going to listen to this podcast.
That's true.
and they'll plug us.
Have you ever thought of listening to books on tape instead of so many podcasts?
Yeah, I did for a little while at Audible for a little while, but Yeah, it's too intelligent. I need the quick fix of dumb. But thank you for calling or for writing in there, Kelly.
Yeah, Kelly, thank you.
Better call her.
And
They have
everyone,
notebooks,
don't take our recommendations to heart, but don't stop listening to our show.
Raven.
John from Staten Island, New York, Ben, Tim, and whoever the other two guests are.
Whoever cares.
Lots of compliments. Thank you so much, John. Okay, so I'm sure you've received this question before, but I was trying to figure out what to ask. I wondered how do you identify yourselves respectively as gamers? For myself, I'm a completionist. I needed to obtain every trophy or achievement and clear every map of its side quests, etc. Thanks so much if you read this in the show.
We did.
Yeah, I mean, like to start it off, like I feel like I am a hound for like playing things and like chronologically, like understanding everything from the beginning of a series up until now.
Time hounds they're called.
It's like, there's part of me but I've toned it back. I play Undertale. I want to know where Undertale came from, and so now I need to finally get around to Earthbound. That's like the heart of Undertale. And years ago, that would have meant I had to like try to find some fan translation for Mother 1, and that's where I would have to start. I've kind of dialed it back, but that part of me still exists. It's just like, I like to have a breadth of knowledge of video games that way.
Yeah. I don't know. This is probably the worst word, but stubborn. I'm a very stubborn gamer. Like I like my genres. I'm sticking with it. And if
But
something
you try
turns
everything.
me off, I sample everything. But for example, Darkest Dungeon, I might play it for an hour and be like, all right, I get it.
You like XCOM. You like it.
Yeah.
You're
The end.
a stubborn dabbler.
Stubborn dabbler is the
Quite
best
the same as
description.
XCOM.
Being stubborn is a great quality for that game, though. Like, he'll be fine.
Oh, not stubborn
Yeah, but
with
he's not
actually like sticking
stubborn
with
in
the game.
that way.
It's a matter of taste.
It
Like,
takes a lot to win you over.
Right.
For so long, I was like Call of Duty, ugh. And then I played. God, I think the first campaign I played through was Ghost. I know it's insane.
That is
I had, like,
insane.
had a fine time with it, and now it's like I look forward to the next campaign. Blast through it. It's a good time.
Did you ever go back and play some of the old ones? Like
Yeah, I played Modern Warfare 3.
4, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I'm probably a heartbreaker. I don't mind.
It's a boy band. We got
Yeah.
I'll live them, love them, leave them. That's my motto. So if like,
How do you live them?
play
It's love them and leave
What-
them.
what even is this?
I am
Live in their skin,
fine.
love them, leave them.
I like just save quit them.
In and out, baby. I don't know who this is.
Wow, this
But my point with all this is that I am happy to drop a series like a bad habit if it starts to go south.
hey,
Like,
baby.
Yeah, like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, it's
You want to turn in, like, add any more of your turns of phrases into a sentence? I like to drop them like a bad habit if things go south. It was a cold January
It was a
evening,
cold,
and
rainy night.
the salt of the street was whipping up onto
Oh,
my
God.
pant legs.
Bizarre Detective lives.
He's alive.
So you're just saying is that like you'll just drop a game if you don't like it. If you don't fall in love with it, you'll just walk away.
Yeah,
Okay.
heartbreaker.
Heartbreaker.
Dan,
Well, he was like, "Well, how would you describe yourself as a
It's
person?"
good. It's good.
right?
And for me, the games that I like, I really get into. Like, I want to know everything about them,
You're a romantic.
front and back. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
You're an obsessive.
I don't love them and leave them. Okay, I love them and keep.
I like
loving
you're a
'em.
deep diver.
Yeah, sure. That's a good name
appreciate
for
that.
it. Yeah,
You want to become a master of that game.
right.
Yeah,
and on top of that, I also really, really like. In the last like 10 years or so, I've become more multiplayer focused.
That's cool.
You fish for pearls in the deep end.
Whatever you want to call it, with the sea spray
Oh,
coming
so
up off the deep.
In and out, baby. The great stuff, everybody.
so we got to choose email of the week.
I like the 2015 Game of the Year discussion that we were
Sure.
Just asking about regrets. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's it sounds like a downer
I
topic.
like that last one.
Sort of an inside baseball deep
Or the
cut.
podcast
That's
guy.
true. Let me find it. Okay, so this one is from Craig.
Well, what about
Yeah.
the guy that had us pronounce bagel?
No, that one cannot be.
I like the spirit of that.
Yeah, I do.
I like
too.
how uncomfortable it made Dan. So email of the week goes to Craig. Thank you, Craig, for writing in. What are we going to send a sign? We're going to sign something and send it to him. What's it going
It's
to be?
going to be actually Dan Tack's scalp.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Well, let's get it done.
Well, scalp them and mail them. If you have a question or an email for the Game Informer show, we'll be back next week with more questions. It's podcast@GameInformer.com. And quickly before we wrap up, we have an update on the Game Club. In 2 weeks, we're going to reconvene. In 2 weeks, you better be out of Midgar.
Get the hell out of there.
Get out of there. Hit save. Once you hit the overworld, and in timing with this podcast, we're going to have 2 posts on the website. One is just describing the overall Game Club in general, what you need to know about it. We're going to have discussions, live chats with Game Informer editors. We're also going to have side topics where we can kind of just Game Informer editors may write articles to accompany these the game club, and we're also going to have a story that is a giveaway for Final Fantasy VII remake codes or not remake. We don't have those yet. Holy hell! The PC port. So the Steam on the Steam version of Final Fantasy VII, or that PC port on PlayStation 4. We have codes to give away for that, as well as kind of our conversation topics, things we want you to focus on as you try to get out of Midgar.
We appreciate the enthusiasm so far. We got a lot of people like, I'm ready to talk about 7. What are you guys waiting for?
Yes.
So it's been slower than we expected, but 2 weeks from now is going to be an episode, and at the tail end, we're going to talk all about Final Fantasy VII up until we leave Midgar.
And we want to do it right.
Membership cards?
We are working on those. We need to get more neon. Matt Miller, our previews editor, is going to be sort of part of. He's got a lot of. He loves game clubs. This guy's.
He loves book clubs.
And that is informing some of our direction for the game club. We want to do this right, and so he's going to be involved. It's going to be Hanson, Joe Juba, Miller, and I.
It's going to get dweeby.
It's going to be so dweeby.
Great.
Sounds fun.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you guys for joining us. Yeah. And for listeners and viewers, make sure to stick around for a good chat with Forrest Dowling, who is developing The Flame and the Flood, which is coming out very soon. So stay tuned for that. Forrest Dowling, welcome to the Game Informer Show, sir.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back. I guess you were on this back in the Matt Helgeson era, right?
Yeah. Back when I guess it was audio only. Yes, this is my grand return.
I'm sorry. Are you okay being on cameras? Should we block out your side of the screen?
I'm a little shy, but I think it'll be all right.
And the reason you sound so good is that you're actually here at Game Informer in the studio.
Yes, I am. I've braved the terrible colds of the north to come visit you guys.
It's really above the wall over here, so we appreciate you heading down.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here? What, you making a grand journey around to a bunch of outlets? Or?
Yeah. So as you may be aware, I've been working on The Flame and the Flood, and we are very, very close to release. So I'm just traveling around to show off like a very, very close to final build to folks such as yourself. So this is my grand media press tour.
What does this look like? Like, does it start out with you literally just sitting in your apartment or house going like, all right, probably have to go to San Francisco, LA maybe?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's kind of like, well, where do I know people? I guess, I've met the Game Informer guys, got to stop there, went to New York, I'm off to San Francisco next, and that's kind of it. So it's not the grandest of world tours, I'll say.
It's humbling and very kind of you to put Minneapolis as one of those stops. It's not the go-to place, so we appreciate you swinging by, man.
Yeah, well, hey, thanks for having me.
So the version of the game you're showing off, is it the same that's in early access on Steam then? Is it the same updated build?
Nope. We're showing now the final version. There's a lot of stuff that's coming that's not in early access. Like we've been holding off on the campaign mode, for example. Like early access has just been the endless mode, and we've been using early access really for a lot of testing and tuning, and just getting feedback about how the game plays, because that's the same across early access and the campaign. Like they're very much the same game.
Okay.
With just like the campaign has an end and some sort of specific story beats along the way. So we've been using early access to really hone the gameplay, and but holding off on the campaign just because, there's this problem when you're in early access and then you go to full release. A lot of times it just feels like, well, yesterday was Monday and now it's Tuesday.
Totally.
Like there's not like a big thing that goes along with it. Like there's not like a clear line of demarcation where it's like, oh, now the game's complete and I understand why it's complete, and it wasn't just, the last 50 bug fixes made it go from early access to complete. So we did want to hold some stuff back, and make sure that it actually, meant something when we went from early access to final release.
Do you think that's a lesson that a lot of people in early access are learning, is to save something big, to save a big gut punch for when you actually go 1.0?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I haven't. In recent months, like early access changes all the time, and what people are doing changes all the time. And in the last few months, I've really just been very heads down in my own game. Like I kind of don't know what's going on outside at all. Like, does TV still happen? I don't know.
I have some terrible news about
Alan.
Alan Rickman. I'll sit you down later and explain the whole thing. It's not important.
No, that I was aware of. But yeah, I don't know. It's certainly a sentiment that I've seen with other developers where like one of the risks when you talk about going into early access is like nobody will care when you're done,
Yeah.
So I don't know. And it is kind of a con, to it, but that's why we were trying to do something a little differently. So
for sure.
I don't know. I'll keep an eye on it and see. Like, it's not that often that you see games tip over from early access to final release, but I think Darkest Dungeon is doing it today, perhaps. as
Yeah, we talked
record
about it
this.
earlier on the podcast.
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, I'm excited to see. I'm curious if I didn't really follow their development, but I played a bunch of builds earlier and loved it. So that's high on my list to check out.
Oh, for sure.
Once I'm done touring, or maybe on the plane.
Ooh, that's a good one. We should wind back the clock a little bit, because when you guys debuted the game, I think you debuted it alongside a big feature in the magazine that Matt Helgeson wrote, and he actually went out and visited you guys over in Boston.
Yep,
Molasses Flood, the name of the studio?
that's correct.
All right, there we go. What was that whole experience like for you? Kind of having Matt Helgeson journey into the halls as you guys were just getting up and running?
Well, the hall, like the office is pretty small.
Okay.
It's just sort of off a little co-working space, but it was a really cool experience just because. So myself and all the team, like, we've all worked on big games before this, and we're used to working with or meeting with press and whatnot, and doing kind of events and that sort of thing. And then when we started our own studio, it was just kind of crazy to me that, like, we went from, like, it feels like you're very, very tiny, with 6 people, but then to get like a big feature in Game Informer and to have somebody like actually fly out and meet us and write a big piece, it felt like we can do this. Like, we got this. This is amazing. So it was really exciting for us, because I think, like, one of the big challenges when you're on a small team like ours is just getting noticed, because there's so many small teams, so many indies, so many people doing awesome stuff, that to sort of be able to punch through and have somebody pay attention was just phenomenal. It's really exciting.
Especially like coming out of, you were from Irrational, some people from other studios over there around Boston. But it seems like with Irrational specifically, like, as that studio, I don't know, evolved, imploded. I don't know exactly what the phrasing is for what happened to Irrational. How would you put it?
We'll say evolved.
Evolved.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shifted form.
Shifted focus for sure.
Yeah. It seemed
Absolutely.
like so many small indie games came out of that studio. It was like a supernova, you birth new stars.
Yeah.
It seems like so many stories. You see a headline almost every month. It's like former Bioshock Infinite developers are
or
working on this.
Bioshock or Bio 2. Like, I
Yeah.
actually was thinking about it the other day, and God, this is like a nerdy academic art thing, but there was this show I was at recently in a local art center, contemporary art place in Boston, that was about the Black Mountain School, which was this college that was formed on all these, like, really high-minded ideals and whatnot, and existed for just a very short period of time. But out of it, like, if you follow art, there's all these people that were students and instructors that are, like, sort of the pillars of, they're the greats of almost a 20-year span of contemporary art. And it was just this one little sort of like a pressure cooker that spawned all these incredible artists out of it. And I mean, I don't want to, like, compare myself to, like, some of these.
You just did. I'm sorry.
I did. It's true. But that's, in a way, it kind of feels like when you look at how many great sort of things are coming out of people who've worked on various Bioshock games. And also, by great, I'm going to say, like, all, the people I know who've gone on to do great things that are not me. Like,
Yeah.
I hope to enter that those rarefied halls. But
Why do you think that is? What do you think was special about the team at Irrational? Are they just more independently minded? Is it just that you guys were working on a really weird game, so you wanted to keep that trend going, and the only space you could do that was the indie scene?
maybe. I mean, I guess it's hard to say in general. Like, I think in general, like, Irrational was a very demanding place to work, and hiring even was really hard. Like, it was really tough to get a job there.
Okay.
So you already have, like, kind of decent people from the get-go, and then they learn, like, from some really great people, the craft and whatnot. And from my own perspective, when Irrational downsized and I found myself out of work, like, I looked at it and I was like, well, let's see, Infinite it sold really well. It was like, it scored really well. I think it was like a 93, 94 on Metacritic or something.
I think we
like
gave
that.
it a 10. Yeah.
Yeah. And, after that, I'm looking at, like, well, I could probably get another job. Like, I don't think that'll be too hard. But at the same time, I look at what I just did and then ask myself, like, well, am I going to go on to work on something as good or better? And there's not, like, a lot of room to get much better from what we had done.
Right.
So at that point, it's kind of like, well, I'm kind of either going to take a side step or almost a back step, or I'm just going to do my own thing. And, knowing that I'm probably not going to do something of the scale or caliber of Infinite, but at least it was an opportunity to sort of do something very different. And I think that probably a lot of people, after working on games of the caliber of like Bioshock, or Infinite or whatnot, probably have a very similar sentiment where you're just kind of like, well, okay, I've worked on one of the best expressions of this,
Right.
like the big expensive first person narrative shooter. Like maybe it's time to try something completely different.
Yeah. So before we get to Flame in the Flood, what are your thoughts on Bioshock Infinite these days? Looking back on that experience, I'd imagine you're fairly proud still.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I think it was. So at that point, I had previously worked at a studio called Chaos, where I worked on a game called Frontlines, which I don't know if anybody remembers, and a game called Homefront, which
Yeah, totally.
was very memorable for it had an awesome marketing campaign. Like the art for that was incredible. Like the black and white image of like the guy with the flag over his face.
And the opening levels people really loved.
Yeah. I mostly worked on multiplayer on that, but the point being, I came out of Chaos and I was like, okay, I pretty much know how to make a video game at this point. And I feel like the process of, working at Irrational, I came out of it like, oh, now I know how to make a good one,
Interesting.
Like it just sort of, it took sort of all the bits and pieces I had learned and sort of made them better along the way.
Because of the team around you or because of the actual project?
I think like just the creativity and the drive and the team really, the direction and mentorship and whatnot.
And so what does it come down to? Just iteration?
Well, there's iteration, but there's also like the questions you ask yourself when you're iterating, because you can just monkey with stuff and like just the process of changing things over and over isn't necessarily a good one, but it's like the questions that you ask yourself when you're changing things, or like the sort of rules that you lay out for yourself. And like a lot of the emphasis at Irrational was very much on like, what's the story we're telling and how are we surprising people and how is this interesting and how is this, a good story and how is this fun and like what's the economy and like there's all these sort of higher level questions that get rolled in, and like just the process of iterating is important, but if you've got, direction in terms of what you're iterating on and why you're iterating on it, I think those become like the harder things to learn.
So that all sounds pristine. Just being in this environment, surrounded by really creatively charged people, like iterating just on pure quality. You've got the Bioshock name, you're on a good stone slab there to start working from. What do people not appreciate about the way Bioshock Infinite was developed? What do people maybe don't know or understand about like that, maybe just the stress involved or that studio culture?
I don't know. I mean, I guess like one of the important lessons always that we would always look at or think about when working on Infinite is that none of that matters. Like when you're playing the game in the end, like all you've got is the game and all you're looking at is the game. So I guess like it's sort of a weird question that I don't know how to answer.
Sure.
Just because it's hard, it's hard to make something good and there's like a lot of toil involved and there's a lot of like, you'll work long and hard on something only to have it cut and feel miserable about it or something, but you move on and whatnot. And in the end, it doesn't really matter because, there's this term we always use, which was player facing, like what does the player see? What does the player know? What does the player like? Whenever I pitch something, I needed to know exactly, what do they see? What are they hearing? I could never use terminology like they decide, they figure out, they know, because you don't know that. Like all you know is that which you've put in front of them. So in some ways, I think I think a lot of stuff that's really good has a lot of maybe pain behind it to some degree. Like I think it's interesting watching like behind the scenes on films or something, or something like Apocalypse Now behind the scenes where it's just like a slog, but the end result is amazing. And sometimes, that's what it takes.
Yeah. And so you were lead level designer.
Yeah,
on Bioshock
yeah,
Infinite.
that's correct.
What areas did you work on specifically then? Does that kind of cover the whole game or specific sections?
Yeah, like it's sort of, that job can mean a lot of different things. It can mean like it's almost just an administrative management job, but I really, really like to be hands-on with stuff. So what it meant directly was I was sort of like responsible for everything that was done throughout the game in terms of the level designers. But I directly worked on just like bits and pieces of it, or, towards late in the project, I worked on kind of every level, but just to like fix a bug here or there.
Okay.
But I probably spent the most of my time, at least in like the sort of last year of development when everything really came together on Town Center, like about maybe the first hour or so of gameplay. And I worked with some other super talented level designers. Like I no way want to try and say like, yeah, it was me. Because it definitely, I mean, I worked a lot and supervised that team and whatnot, but also, worked collaboratively with the artists and, took direction from Ken and from the narrative team and whatnot. But yeah, like that was a lot of kind of from the moment the rocket lands in Colombia up until like right past the lottery was. I spent many months on that stuff.
Jeez, I love that section, and I feel like as time has gone on, that section just stands out more and more as so unique. And the thing that a lot of people say about that entire opening area is just, God, I wish it would have gone on longer. Like I love that they can postpone the action and the real, conflict until, what is it, hour and a half? Maybe I probably spent until things really kick into overdrive.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, maybe you could spend that. I think like most people, it was probably around 45 minutes or so.
Okay, so how'd you know how long to delay that? Were there a lot of discussions about, at what point do we have to give players something to shoot?
Yeah, I mean, that level got iterated on for a very long time. There have been many versions of it that do many different things. And, first levels are super hard in any game because you build the game and then you sort of move back and build the first level. And then like the more that the ending becomes clear, the more you need to go back all the way to the beginning to start like figuring out like, all right, how are we going to be planting the seeds for this? So, that was a level that we almost, had to a finish point and started going into testing and realized like nobody understands, all sorts of different stuff that was going on. And, we ended up adding all sorts of different stuff in it and moving things.
Navigating or like teaching them the powers they have?
No, it was much more like, because that was before you really had powers or anything. And the navigation was like, it wasn't high stress or anything. And it is a pretty straight shot. So it wasn't like super terrible to try and sort of make the space navigable. It was much more like, what do we need to say about this world right now? How do we need to set it up? And, how are we, like one of the important things was just conveying this sort of sense of wonder so that when like the curtain lifts and whatnot and you see what this world really is, you realize like, oh, this isn't nice at all. But, it's really important for it to seem super pleasant and nice and pastoral and beautiful up until that moment.
Yeah, it was very pleasant up until the baseball sequence.
Yeah.
For the interracial couple.
Yeah.
Do you guys have discussions internally about like, this is, I know you want to grab people's attention, but like, this is some bold stuff. This is some of the most bold stuff that has ever been put in a video game, I would argue.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what those discussions were like for that specific moment?
God, I'm trying to remember. It was quite a while ago. There wasn't a huge amount of, I think discussions around that sort of thing generally would often, come down to like, are we going far enough or how far is too far? I suspect that a lot of those, like the nuts and bolts of like, what are the lines, maybe even occurred like over my head,
Sure.
or at a higher level than that. Like it almost, maybe they occurred between like legal and creative or something. I don't know.
Right. But are you guys just like working at your desk and looking around and be like, this is crazy. Just acknowledging every once in a while, like how bold this thing is that you're making.
Yeah, I guess like, sometimes it really, I guess like in some ways we were trying to do that in every direction, So it was kind of like, well, I think we can get away with this if like the context is, is nuanced enough.
Sure.
Like if it was clear enough that, this is not a thing that we are creatively endorsing,
Right.
or
Right.
anything like that. But
We're not
yeah,
making it fun.
I don't recall there being like a huge amount of like, have we gone too far, guys? I think it was kind of like, no, we're doing a thing that is like almost an exaggeration of a period.
Yeah, totally. Are there areas?
It was a bad period,
Turns out, yeah. Are there areas or you think aspects of Bioshock Infinite that deserve more attention? By the way, we just had Ken Levine on a couple weeks ago. I think I asked him a similar question.
Oh,
but
yeah.
What stands out to you about that game that you're especially proud of that you don't think people call out enough?
That's a good question because there's been like, it's like every part of it's been praised to some degree or another.
Right.
I will say, actually, this is maybe not the best answer, but I think a lot of people feel like the gameplay wasn't particularly like deep or nuanced or interesting. But one of the things that I worked on with it was actually the first DLC, which was Clash in the Clouds, which was just combat, it was just combat focused. And when given that challenge to do that, like I felt like we made something that was super fun, and like the combat is really fun and interesting when you're actually using like the full slate of tools and whatnot. But I think that that's something where you could maybe get through the game without, using that full slate
Because
necessarily.
you kind of get stuck in your groove.
Yeah, and it's less interesting at that moment. But I think that the systems guys did just a fantastic job and probably don't get enough credit for the work that they did there. So yeah, I guess that might be a thing that I would call out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'd be curious. I should go back to the archives. I'm curious what Ken said to that.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember what he called out specifically. I can't remember now. I'm sure listeners might remember. But so then moving on from Irrational, like, did you take some team members with you, or were you the only Irrational veteran that moved on to Molasses Flood?
No, we actually, the team is 6 people altogether, and all of us have worked at Irrational at one point or another.
Wow, okay.
A couple not at the time. Actually, 3 of the 6 of us were at the time of that the studio downsized. Were at Irrational, but one had left like a number of months earlier and had just been working on his own art. Another was I believe the technical director at Irrational many years ago, like around the time of I think Freedom Force and like some projects that never came to fruition.
Sure.
And the last member, or not last on the team, and we're not in order or anything, but he had worked on Infinite as an AI programmer, but he had just been there for about 9 months on contract and then had been doing his own indie stuff outside of that. So yeah, I basically knew everybody through Irrational in one way or another.
Okay. And you're just having hushed conversations or just phone calls after you left Irrational, or how do you actually recruit people to form the new studio?
I mean, it was after the closure. We were, there was a lot of recruiters and stuff coming around because, it's always hard to find experienced game developers. And simultaneously everybody was talking with recruiters and whatnot. But then I was thinking about like, maybe we could do our own thing. And actually, the day that Irrational closed was, so I think it was in February a couple of years ago, and the art director from Infinite and Bioshock, Scott Sinclair, had left, I think, over the summer while we were working on DLC to sort of work on his own work. And I had bought a couple prints from him of his own work because I love his work.
Yeah.
And I was meeting him for lunch to pick him up, and I was, I texted him. I was like, "Hey, dude, gonna be running a little late. Company meeting this morning. I don't know what it's about. See you later." And then I saw him for lunch. I was like, "Well, I don't have a job."
Jesus.
And like right from there, we just sort of talked about like, well, what are you going to do? And I was, like, well, what are you doing? And sort of by the end of after talking for an hour and a half, it was kind of like, maybe we should do something. And it sort of grew from there. And like the 2 of us were both leads on the project. Like he was a director, I was the lead. And I think we had decent reputation on the team. So, I looked at sort of, all right, I'm starting a small team. What do we actually need? And then I talked to people that had been at Irrational that I had worked with, and that sort of had the skills that I would, that we would need to populate a small team. Because unfortunately, I'd love to have been able to work with everybody that I worked with, but if you're making something that reasonably could be made with, or the target is like 6 people or so, there's some really really specialized people that worked on it that would maybe wouldn't be a good fit for a tiny team. Yeah. But like I reached out to somebody who is a technical animator. Her claim to fame on Infinite, her most memorable thing was actually probably in the DLC in Paris. There's like a baguette boy who dances around a column holding a baguette. That was just the thing she did.
And it really, I played the DLC. I don't know if that moment stands out specifically.
That's not the big one.
No, that moment did it become a meme or something?
Yeah,
or why
there's
did it
like a
stand
lot
out?
of GIFs and stuff.
Okay.
But like that was somebody that I talked with right away, Gwen. Where I was like, okay, animator and technical artist, that is like, wow, you need that for sure.
We need that baguette boy skill.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we just sort of, I mean, it was, it was weird because essentially like I'm going to people like, hey, why don't you join me? Let's all start a company together. While they're simultaneously maybe getting like job offers and stuff from people who will actually, pay them money
right.
for their time, as opposed to like, maybe we could pay ourselves money someday. But in the meantime, let's make a video game.
And it's nice not to have to move. I mean, the Boston game scene, I mean, the Harmonix is out there.
Yeah,
Are
yeah.
there any other big studios?
Rockstar New England.
Oh, okay.
A few people ended up there.
Okay.
Turbine.
That's right. Turbine.
Unfortunately, when Irrational shut down, none of those studios. Well, Rockstar was hiring. A few people ended up there, but Turbine and Harmonix were not really. They had, I think, both recently had layoffs, so nobody was really hiring. So kind of the option was start your own thing, or move, or don't work in video games anymore.
Yeah.
So
was the most entertaining part of the process so far like that whiteboard phase, the big blue sky phase of trying to figure out, okay, now that we have our own company, what type of game do we want?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I feel like we moved through that one actually pretty quickly. Like I feel like we moved really quickly on this game. Like I think it's been probably around 18 months in development, all said and done, which
pretty
is
good.
Yeah, it's like faster than anything else I've worked on, and we kind of went through that early phase very, very quickly. Like I think we arrived on like a concept very, very fast.
Were you just studying the market at the time and realizing like survival's huge, or what was the kernel of that concept?
In part, I mean, there was a couple different things. Like at the time I was playing DayZ, and it was a time in DayZ's development where, as I recall, there was like a zombie bug where they didn't spawn or they wouldn't see you or something. I don't remember, but they were basically a non-issue. So I was just playing DayZ for the first time and just kind of running around and like rummaging houses and finding like better shoes. And I was like, this is actually kind of fun. Like I like this process of just kind of exploring and finding stuff and whatnot. And then from there, I was like, I wonder if I could, like, is there enough meat on the bone in terms of like just that little subset of survival? Like, can we just pare down? Like, maybe you don't need other players that are like, handcuffing you to snare into their blood farm. Maybe you don't need zombies. Maybe like just the act of like sort of survival. Maybe there's enough gameplay meat there that
totally.
we could do something with that. So like that was kind of floating around in my head, and I had just been thinking about different ideas or ways to sort of do like smaller versions of that.
Yeah. So we should just set the scene. Like, how would you describe Flame of the Flood now? What type of game is it? What do you do?
I would say it's a roguelike survival game in which you travel a procedurally generated river and try and survive a harsh wilderness.
I think early on, I remember when we were talking about doing that feature, I remember it was pitched as, yeah, some Bioshock Infinite guys, they're making basically Tubin meets Oregon Trail.
Yeah, that's a fair. That description still holds.
Okay.
For sure.
Oh, great. I don't want it to be condescending. I'm sure it's more than that.
I love that.
Okay.
That's great because it is that. It's like you've got the rafting where you're shooting down the river and whatnot and avoiding obstacles. And
is it easier than Oregon Trail's rafting? Because that was just notoriously impossible.
Yeah, well, it's more the two. Well, I don't know. It's sort of its own thing, actually.
Right.
Like it's definitely more sophisticated than Oregon Trail's rafting or Tubin's rafting. At the same time, like maybe less arcadey.
Sure.
But yeah, and then you're exploring around on land and avoiding predators or trapping them if you can gather the supplies, and it's really like a resource management game, like almost strategic in a way where you're just trying to like keep all your various like problems dealt with, like if you're finding clean water and you're making sure you got plenty of food to eat, and then you're finding shelter or fire if you get wet or cold, and then you're resting if you get too fatigued, and it's really those four things that you're kind of keeping in balance. And then also when you're on the river, you can bang up your raft, and if that gets destroyed, you drown. So you need to keep track of that as well. Although it's less like that doesn't always drop. It only is like your raft's only losing condition when you smack into stuff.
Okay. So as you guys are developing the game, I know you guys have said that you've kept your head down pretty well, but are you feeling confident about it just as far as, I mean, survival games are still huge on Steam, and I mean, it seems to be growing in the console market. I mean, Ark Survival Evolved is on Xbox One now and stuff like that. Are you feeling good about the potential market for another survival game out there?
I hope so. I don't know. Like it's a thing that I've just been working on, and I hope people like it. I hope people are still interested in survival games. I hope that what we're doing is like interesting and unique enough that it stands out a little bit. The
art style definitely helps with that. It's
yeah,
gorgeous.
for sure. I hope so. I guess I couldn't say for sure. I guess we'll find out pretty soon. If people are interested in it or not.
So I started it up last night, just not the campaign, but just the early access version on Steam, kind of the endless mode, I guess you'd call it.
Yep.
Really, I was struck by the art, and also something I loved is your guys' initial trailer, like the Kickstarter trailer, had a beautiful song in the background. And it's like, well, all trailers do, or the best ones do, moving on. But then I was struck actually in the game when you're on the river, music kicks in, and it also has lyrics. Like, there's so few examples of music with lyrics in games. Is that a big recurring theme throughout the entire game then? Is you want to keep more songs with lyrics peppered throughout the experience?
Yeah, I mean, well, as you might be aware, the game is randomly generated. So like basically whenever you leave a dock or enter a piece of land, there's like 2 libraries of music, and there's a chance that a song is going to play. And there's in the campaign, there's a few, specific pieces and whatnot that are matched to the world. But yeah, like from early on, we really wanted music to be an important part of this because it just seems like it's part of the Americana and the Southern sort of traveling the river thing. And we were fortunate enough to work with a great musician who built a soundtrack for us. And one of the reasons that I think lyrics are actually important is he wrote all these songs based on the game.
Really?
Yeah. So early on, there's this nerdy kind of like game design / marketing exercise thing we did, which is came up with a long list of words that were words that we associated with the game. Like, it could be things like, feelings, or like fatigue might be on the list, or discovery or exploration, or realistic survival, or any of the
Cute dog.
Sure.
Okay.
It was a pretty long list, and then we kind of organized that into like, well, what are the most important ones, and then we just sent along this document to him that had all these single words that were sort of that were kind of broken into here's like kind of the verbs, and here's like the emotional words and whatnot. And he just went through the list, and he wrote all the songs and lyrics based on that, and based on his own experience. Like this guy Chuck Reagan, and the album's coming out very soon as well.
Is it called Flame in the Flood?
It's called The Flame in the Flood.
Oh,
yeah.
That's awesome. It reminds me a little bit of like what the No Man's Sky team is doing, where that the band there is also like releasing a No Man's Sky album to go along with the game. It's a cool, unique twist.
Yeah. Actually, for folks on the East Coast, Chuck's going to be playing that album. He's going to be touring in a couple weeks in early February.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
He's not going to like project the game behind him or anything, is it?
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm sure you guys would like that, but it'd be a little more.
The music's great, and certainly doesn't. I don't even think I would like that. Like, I think I like the music.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he wrote all this music for the game, and I thought it'd be really interesting in a game where you're kind of running around and exploring and whatnot. Like, there's no need for there to be like hard cuts, and because it's procedurally generated, it's really hard to try and even think of a way to map it to, what's going on at any given point. And,
right.
And the music itself is such a great, like, it's good. Like, and one of those things that I think is a good kind of creative thing to think about is if you've got like really great stuff, like get out of the way of it being good, like don't make choices that in any way sort of detract from how good it is. So in this case, like really liked it. So it's just like, let's just play songs. We'll just play them in their entirety.
Right.
We'll just let it be sort of a soundtrack in the world.
It reminds me, and I know other developers have made this reference too. I don't know how monumental it was as far as the industry realizing like, oh, this is really a great idea. But it reminds me of Red Dead. Have you played Red Dead?
Uh-huh.
Like the Mexico sequence where you're riding off there and the song plays with the full lyrics. And it's like, God, why isn't this done more in games? It's so satisfying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was it a touch point for the team then as far as the musical direction?
Not specifically, but when you say it now, I'm like, I'm sure that was like in there. It was floating around in my head or something. But yeah, it's cool. Like I just like when that happens, or scenes and sequences in movies or whatnot where they just like let a song play and let that be sort of the audio landscape.
Yeah, for sure.
Really can lead to some great moments.
So what surprised you about developing this game since the last time you were on this podcast, I guess we can say?
Yeah.
So it's been the maybe biggest challenge you didn't expect going in?
That's a good question. Like it's not been like a brutal, terrible development or anything. I mean, we've worked really hard the last few months in particular. let's see. I mean, like, there's a lot of like smaller design lessons I learned or assumptions that I made that maybe weren't correct in the end, or
any big ones in that small
well,
handful?
you were playing endless mode. One of the things that when we kickstarted this game, the original pitch was like this will be like 3-4 hour game, and in the end, I think the campaign will probably. I think it takes most people once they're experienced like maybe 4 to 5 hours or something like that. But always, endless mode was kind of a stretch goal, and I never really thought. I was like, I don't think this will be an endless mode kind of game, but people have really taken to it, and we've seen people like do far better than I ever thought was possible. Like it's a game where you start up and play it, and I think most people make it a mile or two on the first time they play it, and like a good run, like a really good run is maybe 30-40 miles. And like there was somebody who just posted on our Steam discussions who just hit 227, I believe, and I'm like, I didn't even know that this was possible. But to like see people really get into like the rhythm of the game and play it for that long was surprising to me. Like it seemed to me like the target was the campaign, and that was sort of like I think this will be about the amount of time that people would want to spend with this. But we're finding people really enjoying it to the point where they're spending a lot longer, and I'm seeing play times on people's Steam accounts that are much higher than I would have anticipated, which is great. Like that's a great surprise.
Is that like the Steam page the most satisfying feedback so far? Just reading the user reviews so far and the discussion page and everything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think there's been a lot of really great, helpful feedback in the discussions. They've helped make the game what it is now, for sure. Like that's been one of the greatest assets of early access.
I think you guys are sitting at very positive.
Yeah,
in the review sections. That's gonna feel nice.
Yep, absolutely. It's like 91% or something like that,
Nice.
which is great.
Yeah.
Especially because there was a lot of choices we made where I was like, I don't know how this is gonna go over. Like the fact that it's not combat focused, for example.
Right.
Like it's a lot of combat's indirect. I was like, I don't know, but there was one in particular I saw recently, a recent review that was posted that just put a big smile on my face. Because one thing that, even though the game's like really like illustrated in its style, like it's definitely got like a very not realistic look. I was trying to build a very like realistic kind of survival sim, or at least based on real world survival underneath the hood. And I saw a review that somebody posted recently, where he basically opened with like, I'm pretty fussy about survival games, and the reason is that I teach wilderness survival.
Oh, interesting.
Like
Okay.
that's his job. He's like a survival guy.
Yeah.
And then he was like, this is probably the most accurate survival game that I've seen in terms of like what it actually shows in models and whatnot, which I thought was very satisfying for me, because
Wow.
like I feel like a lot of that, like there's some pretty hardcore like studied survival stuff going on underneath the presentation of it. But
Just as far as like player needs or like human needs, I guess I should say.
yeah, or even things like one of my number one references is just this battered copy of a edible and medicinal herbs and plants book.
Oh wow. Okay.
So like the stuff that you're harvesting and collecting is like
Gotcha.
stuff that everything that you collect and can eat is stuff that I pulled from this book, and I tried to like match things like if you stand in an anthill and get ant stings, like I look at what this Tom Brown is the author of the book, like what does he say that this plant does, and what does it alleviate, and so on and so forth. We definitely took some liberties as well. Like there are snakes in the game, and when you get bitten by a water moccasin, you can fix it with dandelion tea, which don't do that in the real world. Like that will not help.
You're causing so many deaths around the world.
Yeah, but
Flame
that's-
in the flood.
But
taught me.
we wanted snakes, and the problem with that is there are certain things like if you get bitten by a venomous snake in the wild, there's no wilderness treatments that are really good.
City Slickers told me that if you suck the
poison
butt,
out,
that it
yeah.
would totally work.
I mean, I think that's not like, no, it won't totally work, but I think that's like a slow the process a little bit.
Okay.
Or tourniquet or something. I don't know. Don't if anybody's listening, just don't listen. Go to a hospital.
So you're super into survival. Is that a big thing throughout your life? Did you do a lot of camping growing up? And that
Well,
whole
yeah,
deal?
I grew up out in the country.
Oh, okay.
Like both myself and art director Sink, we're both sort of country kids. So like I was never big into like hunting or survival or anything like
Yeah.
that, but I did grow up basically like running around in the woods and exploring the wilderness and whatnot. Like grew up in a very rural place, so I feel like very at home in the country, and I like to get out of the city as much as possible and
Yeah.
hike and whatnot.
It's interesting to think about just how important that upbringing is for game developers. Maybe it's just because I'm in love with Minecraft right now. But thinking about like Notch growing up in like the Swedish wilderness, and I know the creator of DayZ, Dean Hall, he was like a
Yeah.
survival expert, and he was big on the outdoors too. So it's like game developers that grew up in the country are more interested in making survival games. Is that an oversimplification, maybe?
Maybe, I don't know. I mean, there's always like, what is it, that old sort of writing adage, write what you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, not that I'm claiming in any way to be a survival expert. Like, if I was actually in a legit survival situation, I'd be dead within minutes. Like, especially like if you threw me outside right now into this Minneapolis winter, 3 minutes, and I would be. That's about how far I could make it. It would
Just
not,
on a sidewalk surrounded by people, doesn't matter.
Yeah,
3 minutes.
you could put a hot dog in my hand, and I'd still be dead. Like moments later of starvation somehow.
It explains Ken Levine grew up in 1912 as well. Like it all works
he
out.
knows.
Yeah.
That was in a flying city. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Sure.
Maybe not. I'm not really sure.
That's cool. I like the idea of there being this very hardcore angle, but on the surface you wouldn't expect. On the surface you
Yeah,
expect like, oh,
yeah.
I'll pick up some orbs or some glowing nonsense. 'Cause
Yeah.
the game is a very abstract design.
Yeah, like I hope it works. I don't know. It might be, it could be that there's like friction between those things and people see it and they're like, oh, it's like a fun, gentle game. And then they find it's a hardcore game, and people that wanted a hardcore game are like, oh, that game looks like a baby game. I don't want it. So my hope is like that the contrast works. You know, like I like contrast like that, sort
Totally.
of something that looks like fun and bright and colorful that's actually not at all.
Yeah.
Like I like that combination a lot.
I think of like
personally.
Valiant Hearts. I don't know if you played
Yeah,
that
yeah, a bit. I
Okay.
didn't get too far through it, but yeah, that was a gorgeous game.
Oh my God. Animation's amazing.
Yeah.
So going indie, I'm sure you're sick of that term. I'm sorry. But I guess starting this new chapter in your career, are there big lessons about the industry that you've learned? Not just game design, but as far as the overall game industry, what have you learned from this whole experience so far?
I mean, a lot of really boring business stuff.
Is that all it comes down to? How to manage an Excel spreadsheet?
I mean, that's a big part of it. Like,
Okay.
it's stuff that I've never needed to deal with, or even like marketing stuff. You
Yeah.
know, like just organizing, traveling around the country to talk with people. Like that's a thing I never had to do. That was a thing that other people would deal with, and they're just kind of like, if I did press at all, it was just sort of like, all right, you talk to them.
Don't say anything dumb and go.
Yeah.
But I've heard other indie developers talk about how complicated it is to market games, or how like they just feel out of their comfort zone. But I just feel like it'd be the easy part, wouldn't it? Like game design has to be so hard. But as far as like lining up, like, oh, and then I just talk about the game to people and come out with some cool things that stand out about the experience. I mean, is it really that challenging?
Yeah, I think it is, just because there's so much out there. Like how many games came out on Steam last year?
Oh, good Christ.
Like it's more than one a day at least.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, I think God, I'm not even going to try and say a number because I'm going to get it totally wrong.
I'm going to go with 13 a day.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay.
I think it was maybe like 1,000, so 3 a day or something like that. But there's a lot, and like how much space does anybody have in their mind for just things to enter their eyes and for them to notice it, and when you see like big games get marketed, the way they work is you work on like just impressions over and over and over again. So like you see the ad on the bus stop, and then you see the ad on the bus, and then you see the ad on the cab, and then you see the ad on TV, and then you see the ad in your dashboard, and then you see the ad on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah.
And then like through those 7 or 12 or 20 times, you actually remember like, oh yeah, there's that game, and I remember what it's called. But it takes like that's how a lot of that marketing works. Is
Totally.
Just put the thing out there and repeat impressions over and over and over again.
Right.
And that's not cheap and whatnot. So what you're trying to do, like what we're trying to do with an indie budget, is basically make up for the fact that we can't afford any of that stuff. And I think that's like the big challenge, is you can't buy your way out of the problem.
Right.
So you do see some interesting problem solving, but it does become like a big creative problem. Like what was the game? It's out on Steam. It just came out. It's called like Fight
Ooh,
Quest,
yeah.
Punch Club.
Something like that. Sure.
Like
yeah. Sounds vaguely familiar.
I'm gonna look so stupid because I don't remember what it's called. But they did
Not enough impressions for marketing.
they did the Twitch thing, so they released a Twitch Plays version of the game. And
As the game was launching?
they weren't launching it until Twitch beat it.
That's smart.
Yeah, and
I
they
would say,
launched-
but I didn't hear about it, so maybe I don't know.
Well, that's the challenge. Like, so
Yeah.
it was written up all over the place, and they launched really strong. Like, I think they launched
wow.
into like the top 20 at least sellers on Steam. You can look at Steam Spy, which is like now as a guy responsible for an indie game, like that's my numbers nerd thing to go to is
Totally.
Steam Spy. Like they've sold tens of thousands of copies of what looks to be like kind of a small pixel art game, which are not like that's not an immediate kind of like it doesn't mean you're not going to do well. Like Undertale's done amazingly well.
Yeah.
But they did some really creative marketing, and I mean I look at that game and I think like, yeah, it looks okay, but it would have had a really hard time standing out. But they made this like amazing they came up with this great marketing idea that worked and like got it out there.
So
And I
is
feel
the
like-
is the solution just to court Twitch, maybe put some jump scares in your game, and then it's all
yeah, maybe like if that's the game you want to make though,
Sure.
and I think that's sort of the challenge. And I guess like a lot of the conversations I see now are, well, you get attention by making an amazing game. So, all right, just do that. Just make an incredible game. But I think like there's probably like really good games that don't get noticed and really great games that do. But it's I think like maybe the reason it's challenging for a lot of people is that it's just a completely different sort of set of brain muscles that you got to use. Like it's the set of brain muscles that involve going out and talking with people or like that sort of thing, as opposed to like solving complicated kind of spreadsheet problems,
Right,
which is
right.
like a lot of game design problems are that, or like complicated spreadsheet problems.
Yeah.
And like getting the word out is not a complicated spreadsheet problem. It's like a really creative, interesting, weird problem.
Yeah, left brain, right brain type
Yeah,
of thing.
yeah, totally.
If you want to oversimplify it. Well, you've been working on it for a while. Congratulations on making your own studio, making your first game. How are you feeling about the game itself at this point?
I'm really, really happy with it. Yeah, I think it's like one thing I'm really happy about is like the thing that we sat down to make, and then the thing that we kickstarted is very much the thing that it is. And that's, in my experience, it's really hard to go from like sort of blueprint and drawing board to finished product, and you're like, wow, this is actually like very close to what we did. And I think we actually have. The question I asked myself early on, we were talking about this earlier, is like, can just the act of foraging stuff and like finding supplies and doing survival stuff, can it sustain itself? Can it be a fun game? And based on like, I won't even use my own judgment of if I think we've done that. I mean, it's actually really hard for me to have fun with the game because I know every number behind the scenes. So I just am like, it's like playing the Matrix or something.
Right,
like I
right.
know exactly what's happening. But in looking at how people respond to it and looking at user reviews and whatnot, I think we've accomplished our goals, which is
Nice.
what else can you do? Like you set out to make a thing, you made it. It's what you hoped it was.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So what's the release plan? Where can people play it? When can they play it? All that
Well,
stuff.
we're on Steam Early Access right now,
Right.
and we will be out on Xbox One, PC, and Mac very, very soon. But I can't say specifically when because we're figuring out some very last minute details at the moment about launching.
Is it all going to launch on the same day though?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Why no PS4?
Because we were working with Microsoft, because we are like an ID at Xbox,
Oh, cool.
console exclusive.
It's been a good
from
experience so
Microsoft.
far with that?
Yeah, they've been really, really great to work with. I mean, it's been awesome. Like just as a small studio, we were just talking about marketing and whatnot. Like we don't have a marketing budget, but like I got to be in Microsoft's booth at E3, and
That's awesome.
met a ton of people that way.
Yeah.
So they've been really, really good and really supportive and really helpful, and whatnot. So,
Cool.
So now, we're just ironing out some last minute details, which is actually kind of nice as an indie studio because like on a big title, the date that you launch has been like ordained a year out.
Totally.
Because you've got like all these deals and stuff and all these marketing deals and
gotta make the
advertising
t-shirts,
deals
man.
and like everything needs to like land exactly. Whereas we can like kind of look at, oh, suddenly this thing got announced or like this thing is happening. Like maybe we should shift back a week. Or maybe we should shift forward a week. So that's kind of what we're doing right now is like figuring out exactly where the smartest point that we could come out is so that we're not like, lost underneath something else. But we'll be letting you know real soon.
Cool. Seems like a good time of the
exactly.
year to get it out there for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Like hopefully the intent was always like early in the year just because you don't want to launch like a little game against whatever comes out in the fall, like Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty and Fallout 4 and stuff because we can't compete with that. So there's always this little gap, right? Like after Christmas where like no huge games come out until like maybe like late February, early March, where the people who moved out of the blast radius of Call of Duty and whatnot have moved their games. So.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Congratulations again, Forrest. Job well done.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to the finished release there.
Great.
And thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Game Informer Show. Be sure to tune in next Thursday. We'll have a new episode waiting for you. See ya.